Great. Okay, it's, I think we gotta, yeah, I've been told it's this microphone in particular that is in the wrong place in the room. So I'm gonna turn it sideways and see if it doesn't feedback as much. This is from Troy, our resident volunteer sound guy. He also says that if we get a graphic equalizer, it will solve this feedback problem. Yeah, it's like a 10, you know, they're relatively cheap. Anyway, I'd like to call to order, and I guess our first order of business is Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I know, it's bad. It's based on experience.
Yeah. Okay. Let me see. I guess we had a number of items in closed roll call. Will show that the 4 sitting council members are here. Let me see. I guess we had a
approval of the agenda.
Approval of the agenda. Oh, okay. I'm just looking
Mayor?
in the wrong place. And yes.
Mayor, may I recommend that we move number 22, the discussion and consideration of a process to select a candidate to fill the seat being vacated by, very unhappily, Councilmember Hartwell, effective April 9th, 2013, to right before the break, call it 3A, because it flows so naturally from numbers 1, 2, and 3, which are also dealing with our other issue on council selection.
Mayor,
I
think we have to approve the agenda and the posting of the agenda before we start moving items. So could we just dispense with that?
And just approve the posting of the agenda?
Yes, I would move approval and move approval of the posting of the agenda.
Okay, so. Okay, so we have a motion, Bragman, second, Hartwell. All in favor of that?
Aye.
Aye. So that passes. So, so are you wanting to talk about order at this point, Larry?
No, I think, I mean, now we can talk about order. Let's talk about order.
Okay. Well, are there any other thoughts on this besides what David has put forward?
I think it's a good idea. I would second it.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Okay, so announcement of closed session action. We took actually no actions. We gave, got information, gave direction to council and staff, and so it's all, basically there's nothing to announce from that. The meeting protocol is the mayor shall maintain order at the meetings in accordance with Robert's Rules of Order, and the council has a responsibility to be a model of respectful behavior in order to encourage community participation and citizen input at council meetings. The council and the audience are expected to refrain from using profane language and/or ridiculing the character or motives of council members, staff, or members of the public, and to maintain the standards of tolerance and civility. The Town Council will review the agenda at 10 o'clock tonight to ascertain which items will be heard that evening and which, if any, will be continued to another meeting. Any matter not started after 11:30 p.m. will be continued to an adjourned or regular council meeting unless the council votes to suspend this rule. So please turn off or put in silent mode all your cell phones. If that's an issue, please do that now. So at this point, I'd like to move on to the regular agenda. First up is the second reading and adoption of Ordinance 769, which is an ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Fairfax establishing the procedure for replacement of council members who resign before the end of the elected term of office. Now, this is something that we had the first reading last time. This is the second reading, and then the next thing on the agenda is voting on it. So, do I hear comments from other council members?
Staff report?
Do we have a staff report?
Sure. Would you like a staff report?
Sure.
Okay. So what we're doing is we're recommending that you waive the reading and authorize the second reading by title only. Approve the second reading and adopt the ordinance 769. As background, this ordinance was first introduced at the special meeting on March 21st. This is the second reading to adopt this ordinance. With its adoption, it actually take effect immediately. If you do not adopt the second reading, then you'd either need to fill the vacant seat for the remaining term or call for a special election. This ordinance is the one that allows you to fill the vacant seat and call for a special election, which would happen to coincide with the general election in November. So with that, that concludes the staff report.
Okay, thank you. And
And
other
we've
thoughts?
And we've added a position, sunset in this, right? That's,
Right.
so that this is technically sort of for this particular scenario, not necessarily in the future.
Right, oh, that's correct. The ordinance would apply to any future things, but there is a sunset provision that's what, 4 years? 2016, that's correct.
Yeah.
And just, Jim, just for clarification, we can call for the election either at the next regular election or at the next specially set municipal election. So we don't have to call the election until we have a regularly set municipal election, correct?
That is correct. You
We
two
have that
choices.
option.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and I guess the main issue there for people listening is that under California law, we had earlier thought, or been given the impression that we wouldn't be able to pick which election it would be, and so that would perhaps leave the town open to unusual costs of about $50,000 to run a special election just to fill the seat. And then last month, we heard that we could have it during our regular, every 2 years, council elections or a special election that you had just mentioned, Larry.
Right.
So just to put it in vernacular. I know for me, that's a big issue of, not wanting to have the town have a liability of that. It's also for me an issue that, people in Fairfax need to get to vote to have their representatives. And are there further thoughts? I mean, I don't want to speak for the rest of the council, but we went around this last time too. Any further comments? I'd like to open this up to the public at this point. Does anybody have any thoughts about it? Okay, well, hearing that, I'll close public thought, public comment on it. And
I would move to waive further reading. I think is
I
the
think
first.
that's what we're doing at this point. So I have a motion. Anybody? Okay, so I have a motion, Bragman, second Weinsoff, to waive further reading of ordinance number 769, an ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Fairfax establishing the procedure for replacement of the town council members who resign before the end of the elected term of office. So, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So that passes unanimously.
I would move adoption of ordinance number 769.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So it looks like that is the case then, right? So second on the agenda would be adoption of Resolution 1313, a resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Fairfax proposing a special municipal election to be held in its jurisdiction on November 5th, 2013, requesting that the Marin County Board of Supervisors to consolidate with any other election conducted on said date, requesting election services by the county clerk, and providing for a candidate's statement of qualifications and filing fee. And I guess, is there a staff report on this?
It'd be a brief one.
Yeah,
So-
it's pretty self-explanatory, I think, but.
Right, I think it's clarification, you've adopted the second reading, so now you can appoint someone and call for a special election. This resolution actually allows you to call for that special election that will be at the same time as your regularly established municipal election, county election, and so will allow us to go ahead and approach the county about getting it on the ballot in that form and fashion.
Yeah, but the appointment is item 3, and this is number 2 in the agenda, where we're basically asking the county to schedule the election. So do I hear a motion?
I'd so move.
Oh, sorry. Anybody want to comment? Should we have an election? Okay. So I'll close public comment then. So we have a motion on the floor. Bragman, second Weinsoff. All those in favor? Aye. It passes unanimously. So number 3 is the appointment of a candidate to fill the candidacy caused by Ryan O'Neill's resignation from the town council and oath of office to seat new council member. So where are we?
Actually, the only thing is, just as background for the public, the council at your March 21st meeting, you interviewed 7 candidates. You narrowed it down to 2 candidates, Renee Goddard and Barbara Kohler. And at that time, you recommended, well, you directed staff to schedule this for a regular meeting in which you would select and appoint a candidate.
So I guess in terms of the process here, do we get to ask more questions, or are there council members that have concerns that have come up in the last week? Is that how long it's been?
It's been 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
It's been an interesting 2 weeks. I think that one of the decisions that I made after the last council meeting was to resign sooner rather than later, so that we can get both of these candidates in, ideally, get both of them onto our council as soon as possible, and I think allow that process to move forward. I know that it's really hard when we have 2 really great candidates, and it's hard to say, it's not a decision of one being better than the other at this point. It's my sense is it's more a matter of order. My intention at this point is to keep my vote where it was. My vote was for Renee to fill a seat. Some of the issues that have come up with that of saying that, like, oh, that's Ryan's seat and Renee can sit in your seat. And I think that's the weirdest argument in the world. Like, these are town council seats. This isn't I'm not entitled to this seat any more than Ryan is entitled to that seat. And I think that, I've gotten some really, really wonderful feedback in the last 2 weeks about having Renee be one of our council members. And I've had a lot of people express, that she's really coming from the people. And I've had moms in the community and people in the line at the grocery store excited. And I think that that's one of the reasons I like Renee as a candidate. And it's one of the reasons I think that she's, would serve really, really well, and why she'll continue to have my support. And I have 1 vote to give on this, and I'm going to give it for the candidate who I think is the most qualified too. And I think that qualifications have come up a lot, and there's a lot of qualifications that make a council member a good council member, and you can't always see them on paper. And I think the dedication that Renee has shown as a leader in our community has been extraordinary, and the energy that she gives, and the hands in the dirt, mostly the hands in the garbage. I don't know if any of you see Renee at our Fairfax festival, but she's got yellow gloves on up to her elbows the entire festival, sorting everybody's trash. And to me, that's not something that is on a resume, but that is a dedication to community that has moved me to give her my support.
I think we've got 2 really good candidates, and actually support them both. And I agree with you. I'd like to have them both up here with us sooner rather than later. My feeling right now, and I've talked to both candidates just so everybody knows, they're both friends of mine, or, colleagues, however you want to put it. I work with both of them, and they're both great, and they both bring different talents and different skill sets to the council. So qualifications, I think it's, like comparing any 2 people, it's very tough to compare people because people are individual and they bring different talents to whatever they endeavor to do. Where we actually ended up was we rated the candidates and we tied on a numerical rating. We actually have not voted for the candidates yet. we rated them, and we came out split evenly on the numerical rating for both of them. You know, my background coming into it's a little different than Pam's. I ran with Ryan. And Ryan was very helpful for me in the years coming up to his election. And I'm really sorry that he had to go. But I do feel some responsibility to Ryan and to what I'll call his legacy. And you know, that is why I tipped the scale to Barbara. And that's not taking anything away from Barbara, because she's got extraordinary talents, as does Renee. I think it's very unfair to start comparing the two, as I said. But I think of all the members of the council, I've kind of got the most allegiance, I would say, and responsibility to maintain or continue that legacy. So I'm going to support Barbara at this point, knowing we're probably going to be going through this again in a few weeks, and hopefully we can even the scales at that time. So that's where I am.
I'm not friends with either of the candidates. I know Renee a little bit more than Barbara. I'm absolutely a little bit surprised. I had thought that there would have been some conversation, I didn't have any, with both candidates, so I would like to make a suggestion, because I can't believe that this was not conversed between the two of you, which is somebody's going to have to step up here and do a profile in courage and say, you do it. You could be number one. I will throw my name, there are no guarantees, but I will throw my name in the hopper for the next one, which is coming up in X days. And I don't think you have to be a magician to understand the council's sentiment toward both candidates. But one of the overall comments that I think we received in the emails from various folks were that there's been a recognition of the sea change in how this council operates, and that days of yore were a little more rambunctious, and these days it's a little more respectful, and that we don't want this event to cleave the town in any way. So while I have no ability to ask you to do so, my recommendation would be for the two final candidates, because I don't know how John's going to go on this, but if the vote holds as it did last time, we could be sitting here when we have a stack of things that we have to do. And I would ask you both to figure out how you want to do this, and go outside and do it, and then come back and tell us how you're going to work it out. That's my thought on the matter.
Okay, so I like to think that you're not going to suggest an arm wrestling championship or something like that, because I really wouldn't want to throw it to that. Okay, there is a difference in these two appointments, and the difference is that one is for a seat that we have just voted. Ryan's seat is basically going to be up for election in November, as is Pam's seat, also going to be up for election in November. The difference, however, is that one of those seats then lasts 2 more years, which is the seat that we're assigning tonight. And then the other one lasts for 4 years. And while there's no law that says you can't jump ship and say, okay, I was on the first assignment, and okay, now I've got to run for the 2-year seat, the person in that seat could very well say, well, I'm going to apply for the 4-year seat, and then, then everybody's running for the 4-year seat, and that leaves that 2-year seat open to somebody else, too. Maybe that was one of the concerns that was in front of us when we were talking about this other thing. So I'd ask the two candidates if there's a preference among the two of you. I mean, or unless you want to follow David's suggestion, either have an arm wrestling championship or step out in the hallway and see if you can agree between yourselves. But I would ask the two of you, if one of you would prefer a 2-year seat or a 4-year seat starting in November to be able to run for that slot.
Mayor?
Can
I'm
I ask
looking-
that?
I don't think so. Town council, you want to weigh in here? I don't think you can bind them to that.
Oh, no, it's not a binding, but if there's a preference that somebody shows at this point, that might sort things out. I mean, it's certainly not binding, but
I suggest not an arm wrestle, but between reasoned people, go out in the hallway, work it out, come back, tell us what you think. For the betterment of the town, in my opinion.
I think it's unreasonable to ask them to make a decision
How
that
about-
is,
Yeah.
that is our decision, but. I'm
yes,
not-
this is our
like,
decision,
this
but
is
can we ask that question?
About 2-year and 4-year?
Yeah, if there's a preference.
Yeah, we should.
Yeah, and we should take public comment too.
Not to be disrespectful, but I think it is your job to make the decision. And I think that's why we voted you guys in. These are hard decisions to make, and I respect all of you. So whatever decision you make, I will abide by it and be supportive of, if it's not me, I'll be supportive of Renee. And I think she would do the same. I've gotten to know her a little bit, and so I think we have mutual respect. As far as answering your question, John, frankly, I haven't really thought about it, and that's the honest truth. I'd like to get past this period and really, breathe a little bit. So honestly, I've thought maybe a little bit about it, but I'm not there yet. I mean, first of all, nobody selected me for the council, and so I think it would be presumptuous of me to even assume that I would have that decision to make. So, but I do respect you asking that question.
Okay, thank you. I thought, yeah. Any other thoughts? Renee, do you want to add anything? Or I could open it up to the public also. Do you want to be there before the public, Renee? Mimi is standing up first, so. Okay. One more time.
Mimi Newton, 139 Mono. I guess I agree with Barbara that it's kind of unreasonable to ask the candidates to figure this out between the two of them. They both, if they haven't decided, one of them to say, I'm taking, myself out at this point, obviously they both want to do this. So my 2 cents is I think that's not, a real solution. And I also don't think that asking them whether they want to run for 2 or 4 years is a solution. I think the solution is you guys not drawing 2-2. I really, really think that's a bad idea. Even though we have elections coming up in November, we have a good period of time between now and then. We have a lot of business to take care of in this town. So I just think you guys maybe need to step out of the room doing the arm wrestling and figure this out.
We have the Brown Act. We can't do that. We have to do it up here. So, can't do that.
We have another comment here.
Susan Adams, I reside at 47 Tamalpais Road. I'm actually here to speak for myself. I'm a constituent. I happen to have voted for all of you. I trust your decisions, but I want to say that I believe strongly in good government, and good government means that the representatives of our town take the decisions, make the choices, study the issues, educate themselves, think hard about it, and act according to what they think is right. I don't think that involves applicants negotiating. I look to you to make those decisions, but I really believe strongly in good government, and that means I trust you to think through these issues, and I want a candidate, I want a council member that you decide on that I know will think through issues. Whether I agree with that person or not on every issue, I know that that person has thought through those points and makes the decision seriously with a good education and back studying the issues and understanding what's going on for the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more comments from the public? If not, I'll close public discussion, and I would entertain a motion.
I'd like to move that we appoint Renee into the town council seat.
I'll second it.
Okay, so we have a motion, Hartwell, second Weinsoff. All those in favor? Aye. Aye?
No.
Looks like it's Renee. Okay, well, alphabetically, Bragman, I guess, is the first one there.
No.
And Hartwell. Aye. So Weinsoff, aye, Hartwell, aye, and I will break that tie and appoint Renee as our next council member.
And Barbara, we look forward to your application. And I might say, although it is probably incorrect to say, that I think the sense of the council is of great respect, and unless an extraordinary candidate comes forward that none of us anticipate at the moment, you certainly will have my support.
Well, let me see. At this point, we have
Actually, Mr. Mayor,
the
according
oath
to
of office.
oath of office, and then you could then take a break, and then they could,
Well, I believe
or
we,
you could, then you could, the person
move-
could sit,
didn't
and
we
then you
move,
can have your discussion.
22?
Should we do the conversation about the appointment of the candidate for the next vacancy before the oath of office or after the, okay,
No,
that's fine.
yeah, we would recommend you
Oath
do
of
the oath of office, then Renee can seat up at the dais, and then that would be something for the discussion that perhaps Councilmember Hartwell then would step down for that discussion. And then you could take a break. So if you like, we could do the oath of office right here.
Yeah, I think that's in order.
I can sit.
All right, raise your right hand and please repeat after me. I state your name,
I, Renee Goddard,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the State of California,
to the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
that I will well and faithfully discharge
the duties upon which I am about to enter.
the duties upon which I am about to enter.
Right.
All right. Look at that. She prepared or what? You made 2 of those, didn't you? Yeah. Yeah, welcome to your first lesson. These chairs have about 3, 4 levers in different places. Good?
I need to recuse myself on this for
Yeah,
this
the
item.
next-
Correct.
The next item is a moved
I'm gonna-
item number 22.
Right, I'm going to step down.
Okay. So this is, in fact, discussion and consideration of a process to select a candidate to fill the seat being vacated by, as we speak, Councilmember Hartwell, effective April 9th, 2013. So that's a little over a week, something like that. Next Monday. Less than a week. So is there a staff report on this that we should hear
It's
first?
basically, we just laid out some options for the council to consider. You could appoint off your existing lists, you could do a new recruitment. If you do another application period, then you would set some deadline, accept new applications. If you get additional applications, probably schedule a special meeting to do interviews. You would probably want to request existing applicants if they'd like to reapply. I think the council needs to decide if you actually want to re-interview existing applicants. Then if not, then you interview, and then you would go through, we would recommend you follow the same adoption selection process as you did last time, and then you would go ahead and do the same thing where you would select a point, and then a person would then take their seat at the next regularly scheduled council meeting. And then, of course, the other option is you could keep the seat vacant till the November election.
Okay, so have we heard this before? Yes. All right, well, I know I have some definite feelings on it, but I'd like to hear from my colleagues. You'd like to hear what I have to say? Well, I think it's important for a democracy, and especially since Pam, while it was rumored that she was going to be taking care of the family farm in Minnesota, and a lot of people heard that rumor, it was certainly not announced in the paper, and I think we should definitely open it up to further application from the public, maybe for a short window of, I don't know, a week or whatever is appropriate, just to see if somebody else has thought about this, watched the process and say, oh, you know, I want a chance to participate in this. And then we would close that, interview anybody who is an additional that has applied, and certainly put the word out to those who applied earlier that if they would like, their hand is still in. And if there's anybody additional, ask them the same questions that we asked, just so that there's an even playing field. And then this council would deliberate and appoint from that group. Other thoughts from other council members?
My feeling is we should move as quickly as we can do. I think we do need to open it up again. I don't think we should redo the application process and make new questions, ask for new applications. I think we should notify the candidates that we interviewed. I think we should put a public notice that we would be accepting applications maybe to the end of next week, if we announce that we're going to accept applications. And I would ask Jim this, can we put notice out that we're going to be accepting applications for appointment until, or prior to the actual effective date of her resignation? So I would say we set a hard deadline, maybe a week from Friday, give people 10 days to get applications in, notify the folks that already applied that we're going to be going through that process again, same questions, same application, and hold a special meeting the following week.
I agree with all of that, but I'm wondering the one thing. I mean, just to break this down, some of the people the remaining 6, some of them, maybe all of them will apply. We don't want to put them through the burden of filling out the same application again.
No.
So,
Not at all.
and also we've interviewed them already. So they've answered the questions. We've had good interviews with all. Why wouldn't we just, at our May meeting, instead of having special meetings, but just do it at the May meeting, since we knew that it was going to be much more of a protracted exercise, needing much more time. But this one might be a much more condensed. But of course, if X number of new people decide to throw their hat in the ring, then yes, we may have to go for the special meeting. But if it was just going to be the existing cadre of folks, why don't we just do it in May? And then,
Avoid the extra meeting.
Yeah, avoid the extra meeting.
extra staff, extra Michelle.
Yeah.
All of that.
Well, the fact of the matter is we don't know if more applicants will come
Right,
forth.
but we will next Friday.
Yeah,
Yeah.
certainly. And I agree with Larry that I think that we need to move rapidly on this. I think we need to give the public a chance to apply if, if it's become apparent to somebody that they just can't resist. Sock it to them. Then they should have an even playing field with the other applicants, and we ask them the same questions. I wasn't suggesting for a moment that we go through the same exercise, have to have somebody answer the same set of questions a second time, because we know what they said the first time around. I think that that may well work, and we just have a section at the beginning of the May meeting, the same as this, where we appoint and seat somebody. There is an advantage to a special meeting, however, in that it gives that new person sitting an advantage that Renee did not have, in that, well, I guess the packet is public. So, I guess I was talking with Renee earlier, and she had read this packet, and I imagine that Barbara did as well. Because you don't know, you don't want to be up here without having read the packet. So, yeah, I guess there is no real advantage aside from closed session matters, which, slowly get up to speed on during that process. Almost 6 of one, half dozen of the other in that respect. So since we don't know who we're going to get, maybe we should just decide at the end of that process. But if we don't get more applicants, should we do it at the beginning of the next meeting? Was that a motion or?
Could I ask staff, the one advantage of doing it at a regular meeting is just everybody's going to know when they need to show up to be interviewed or appointed. If we get a new group of applicants, then I would say we might want to have a special meeting. So can we leave it open?
I guess the easiest from staff perspective, is there a threshold? Like if you get 3 new or 4 new applications, do it in May, but if you get more than 4 or 5, do a special meeting?
Well, that would make it easy to plan.
Because then we could try to have some tentative dates, because it's really hard to coordinate everybody's calendars. And if you want all the applicants to be there, then it's a little more complicated. But if you said it's kind of threshold, then we could let whoever's applying know, and they just have to be here for that date.
I'd say if we get 3 new applicants, then we should have a special meeting.
Sounds right to me.
If not, then we would go through the interview appointment at the regular May meeting.
Mm-hmm. Similar to this structure, we do this first, and then then the new person could sit for the regular meeting.
Okay, and then as far as, can we set the procedure, so can we dispense with re-interviewing applicants we've already interviewed? That's okay to do?
Good.
Okay.
So as I understand it, you want to re-interview the applicants, we would ask if they want to re-apply, and all they would do is their same application would just be given to you.
Right. And we would just use the same questions, same application for any new applicant, right?
Yeah, I think we would have to
Okay.
have an even playing
So
field.
we're not going to reinvent the wheel here. Good, okay.
Okay. So, do you feel directed? Good. So at this point, we have scheduled a break. Are people dying for a break right now?
I'd take a break.
Yeah, okay.
Let's take a break.
All right, see you in 5-10 minutes. Okay, I'd like to call us back to order. And let me see, there are a bunch of announcements, reports, and something. I've had one request to have before the consent calendar. Yeah, go ahead. Town manager will say a few words.
Yeah, we do have a request from the applicant for the public hearing, as his consultant's here and it's on the clock. They're wondering if you can move it up to consider that item now before the announcements and the other. Oh, it's the public hearing on the traffic impact methodology? 17, sorry. 17. So that's a request to the council to consider.
Yeah, do I hear?
I'd move approval.
So we have a motion, Bragman, second Weinsoff, to move item 17 up to next. All in favor? Aye. Good. Any against? It's unanimous. So next up, we have item 17, which is a public hearing, adoption of resolution number 13-17, adopting a traffic study methodology for 1599 Sir Francis Drake Boulevard, which is the old salami factory, and we're in Tack and Feed. And this is the planning director.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, council members, the audience. I'm going to be very brief. This is, as you recall, a requirement of the town ordinance to have the methodology for traffic impact studies approved to you before the report is done. When we get a recommendation from an applicant on what they would like to study, once our traffic engineer has deemed the study necessary, which is when there's 100 additional trips to a use that's being asked for, we have that traffic engineer review the proposed methodology that the traffic engineer for the applicant has put together, which Mr. David Parisi, our town traffic peer reviewer, has done. He concurs with the methodology that's being proposed by the applicant. And then once that study is done, it's grouped with the rest of the application for the use permits, goes through the Planning Commission, and assuming that all goes well on the use permit and design review, the final step is that traffic study comes back to you for a final approval and issuance of a traffic impact permit. So without further ado, the report is before you. It's online, it's in the packet. You have a resolution 1317, approving the methodology tonight. As you said, this is for 1599 Sir Francis Drake Broadway, commonly known as the old Tack and Feed or Salami Factory. And I might just add briefly that what the applicant is proposing to do is put in that space, for a large portion of the space, what an organization called Daily Method Fitness, which is a program that combines Pilates, yoga, and orthopedic exercises. And the remainder of the space will be used for retail uses, and the traffic analysis will take into consideration the possible impacts of retail in the remainder of the space. So that would conclude the staff report. If you have any questions, and Mr. Parisi, as we mentioned, our traffic peer reviewer, as well as the applicant, is here tonight to field any questions you may have. And thank you for moving this up on the agenda, because it saves a nickel for the applicant. Thank you.
Just a quick correction in the text, in the discussion, last part of the second paragraph. It reads that beyond that generated by the prior use as a gas station and auto repair facility.
Thank you. That was a typo from a prior staff report. Thank you. We'll redact that. Sorry.
Okay, are the further questions from the council?
Can we ask whether there can be any mitigation of vehicle car trips by requiring some kind of bike parking or bike rack at the property? Would that be a proper subject for the scope of the traffic impact?
We could certainly bring that up when we have this hearing at the Planning Commission as a recommendation of the council. I don't know if it's actually within the purview of a traffic analysis. I assume there's areas on site where you could accommodate bike parking.
I mean, it would just be one way to potentially reduce the number of vehicle trips. I mean, because in the report they said, excuse me, most of the clientele they expect to be local residents between, I think, 8:45 and 11:30, something like that. So
Well,
I'd
perhaps,
certainly like to see it addressed.
sure, well, perhaps you could ask the applicant that question and Mr. Parisi also.
Okay, thank you.
The other concerns from council members?
Why don't we have the applicant come up?
Yeah,
I mean, I think
that
that's,
sounds good.
that's my, and I think, and maybe what goes along with that is, in the traffic study, is sort of including whether it's safe for bikes to go there, because I know that that intersection, I'm at that intersection on a very regular basis, and my daughter goes to school from there, and I would never in a million years send her on a bike down Sir Francis Drake on that particular location, so, but I don't know.
Okay, yeah, just to answer his question, my name is Doug McIntosh. I'm the applicant with my wife, Jill Daly, and we are planning to have a bike rack on site. I'm a big mountain biker myself. We both bike. We're avid bike people, so we will have that as part of our plan. Okay?
Are there other questions from the applicant, or I can open it up to the public? Okay, I'll open the public hearing at this point.
Bruce Ackerman, 17 Valley Road, and formerly the member of the General Plan Committee. We have in our general plan the notion that whenever we see the opportunity, it would be helpful in town to have a place, a secure storage place for people who come to town and with fairly expensive bikes at times, and mountain bike during the day, and then maybe want to spend the evening in town and have dinner here, and would like to have a place where they can securely store their bikes. And so I just wanted to put that out as another possibility, both for the applicant and for a possible consideration in a traffic study, that might be a way even stronger than a bike rack, something that's actually a secure storage for bikes if there is a place available for that. Be something the town could use, I believe. Thanks.
Well, oh, can you press the
Button so we can hear
press the
you on the
button on
microphone.
the, right on the base, right there, and then pull the microphone down a little bit. Perfect,
My name
thank
is
you.
Molly. I live at 15 Hill, which is very close to the salami factory, and there has been some really big traffic concerns. When Good Earth was put in, we were very concerned about the traffic. It actually has been pretty good. My only question for him is, you know, how would you encourage bike riding and walking? Because I walk everywhere, so, and also what are the hours of operation? And another thing I wanted to bring up to the town council is
So push the button.
Press the button, please.
sorry. You put a sidewalk, on Pastori, which I believe was through the Measure A dollars. And I was expecting a crosswalk between Bell and Pastori to be there. And I was told by a neighbor that it was supposed to be there, and I was wondering if we could put that in or amend the plan so that could go in, because I think it's important because there's a lot of foot traffic that goes on, especially now that Good Earth is there.
There is information relative to that, but that's not what's before you right now.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Any other comments from the public, or would you like to address some of these concerns?
Well, before you go on, it would be nice if we could get the woman's email address and get back to her with the answer to that question.
If you could just call me the planning director, I'm online, Jim Moore. I'd be glad to talk with you about that. Thank you.
Are you, is the applicant interested in? Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, to answer her question about the hours of operation, our busiest time period will be from about 8:45 or 9 in the morning till about noon, Monday through Friday. And I actually live about 11 houses from there. We'll be walking there from our house, both my wife and I, and there's very little traffic during that time period. We will have classes early morning, maybe one at maybe 6 or 6:30, but it's a lot smaller class, and it'll probably have very little impact. I think the average is maybe about 8 people in a class, typically at that time, which would be pretty low impact.
Will you be incentivizing your people? I know that Yoga Mountain gives you a green pass, which gives you, I think, like a 10% discount on a pack of classes if you ride your bike or walk.
We hadn't thought about it, but we're certainly open to suggestions. I mean, we definitely want to, be a part of the community and be promoting people walking and biking. So we'd love to hear from the community and try to adopt what we can.
Well, I have noticed that the very potentially congested area in Larkspur, Queen Madera, where your other facility is, I don't know if it's just you or you in conjunction with the other merchants there, and there are a lot in that square. The traffic flow on that, I was there today, really works very, very well. There seems to be sufficient parking. So however you folks have worked it out there, if you can bring the same common sense to this rather dense little pocket, that would be terrific.
Yeah, like I said, I think it'll integrate well just by the fact that our popular hours are when most businesses are just, they're not open yet. And then by the time we're kind of ramping down, then people are getting out for lunchtime, and those sort of things. So I think it'll integrate well like it does in Corte Madera. Okay? Thank you.
Yes, Renee?
So I just wanted to ask a question about, in the traffic study, does that study also the ingress and egress, and whether you can actually turn around within there so there's no backing out into Sir Francis Drake? And
Yes, that was stipulated in David Parisi's letter, and he is here if you wanted to ask him about that.
Okay. But is that enough of an answer for you? Any other questions from council?
No, I'd move adoption of resolution 13-17.
Certainly.
Sure.
Could you press the button on the little...
Okay, my name is Wayne Vanewalker, Mr. Mayor and council members. I reside at 1587 1/2 Sir Francis Drake Boulevard, which shares a common driveway with 1599. And my concern is that particular driveway, there is a speed bump as you enter that driveway, and means you have to enter at a very low rate of speed and also exit at a low rate of speed. Recently, there's also been a Golden Gate Transit bus stop that was moved from the Pancho Villa area to front of 1599, which is a visual hazard now as you exit. There's also traffic problems with parking with Don's Liquor, as many people will block part of that driveway, including delivery trucks, as they make their deliveries at Don's Market. So I wish that the traffic study consider these items. Also the limited parking there. I know that the owner of the business has just spoken and said that he's expecting 8 people or so, but there's employees that may be parking there in the lot. That neighborhood is also congested with employees and customers of Good Earth and the restaurant parking in that neighborhood, along with other businesses in the area. So I hope you consider all that, and the dangerous left turn also from Sir Francis Drake into that area. I know several times when I try to make it, people are trying to squeeze in between me and parked cars on the north side of Sir Francis Drake, and I'm always afraid someone's going to take off my mirror or a parked car's mirror. So I hope you consider that in your study. Thank you.
And
Mr. Parisi could address any of these.
Yeah.
Good evening, Council. I'm David Parisi. A little bit of background. I worked with the applicant's traffic engineer to formulate the traffic study approach, which includes estimating trip generation for auto trips for a couple different scenarios, including based on the square footage of the site, as well as the number of classes by the time of day. We've also recommended looking at driveway operations and the parking. It is a tight parking lot, and there's some diagonal spaces within that lot, so understanding how traffic would get in and get out, circulate within the lot, sight lines up and down Drake. It's true that there is a Golden Gate bus stop there, as well as any potential conflicts with pedestrians and bicyclists we've asked to be addressed as well.
Quick question, and I know the council is intrigued by the study of traffic, and that's why it was a pleasure to hear you at our MCCMC dinner this past week. When you do your traffic study, do you take into consideration illegality, traffic violations that appear logical to occur at a certain site, or do you discount them and say, well, clearly, we anticipate that people will follow the rules of the road?
Well, for clarity, I won't be performing the traffic study, I'll be reviewing it. And the firm that will be doing the study has a lot of experience doing this kind of work, as I do. And yes, we do look at if there's illegal turns that obviously happen. For instance, when we do traffic counts, if U-turns are disallowed, but they occur, we account for them because that's reality. So, yeah.
So in this case, yes, when you make that left-hand turn, people are flying by you on the right-hand side, as they should not, or at least should be doing so at a very safe rate of speed. When you pull out of that little parking lot and there's a bus in front of you, probably common sense would suggest that you let the bus go or you inch out. I'm not I'm not a driving instructor, but logic suggests. And so you would take these things into consideration?
Yes, we will. And we'll certainly make sure in this study that that particular point is taken into consideration regarding when the bus is dwelled and there's vehicles egressing the site.
I hope that addresses your concerns, sir. It does, one thing I failed to mention was... You have to come. Okay, sorry. Excuse me. One thing that I failed to mention was I'm concerned about the police activity there in the sense of when you call who has jurisdiction. I've called Fairfax Police when that driveway has been blocked before, and they refer me to Central Marin Police. So it gives me concern not only with this traffic study, how much San Anselmo should be involved in this study also if Sir Francis Drake. I do not know what all the rules on that part of the road are, but I call on an address in Fairfax, and I'm told to call San Anselmo Police. So I'm not sure what's going on with that.
Yeah. Well, there's two parts to what you brought up. In terms of the study, we're looking at the reality, what's happening, regardless whether it's on the San Anselmo side or the Fairfax side, with regards to traffic flow and issues that might want to be addressed by the Planning Commission and in the final stop with the council in approving the traffic impact permit. But in fact, you're accurate. It's right on the line. And it's my understanding that San Anselmo enforces along the curb line, from the curb line to the street, parking and traffic issues, up to about Pancho Villa. It's right, the line is very nuanced right there. So they enforce the parking meters somewhere between the tack and feed site that we're discussing and Pancho Villa. Fairfax takes over. And I might just add that the bus stop was, the moving of the bus stop was a town-instigated move to alleviate some larger hazards that were happening with where it existed in front of Pancho Villa when the left turn pocket going on to Pastore was extended and the middle line was slightly altered. So sometimes it's a trading off of issues when you're moving something like that.
Yeah, we're not an island, it's all an interrelated community, which is the nature of community. Are there more concerns from the public?
Yeah, my name is Stephen Franks. I live on 19 Willow Avenue, and my only concern on that would be, not to have a Zumba class at 5 o'clock in the morning. A yoga class might be better off at that time, but the noise level down there right now is very loud at 5 o'clock anyways, so a certain time would be appropriate, I think, for noise levels.
Yeah, and I think the hours of operation are a lot later than 5 a.m., right? Yes. Yeah. 8:30, yeah. Okay, well, at this point, if there's no further comment from the public, I'd like to close the public comment period.
Move adoption of resolution 13-17.
Second.
So we have a motion, Weinsoff, second, Hartwell. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, it looks like it's unanimous. So Oh, first vote, yes, there you go. Okay, so moving right along, we are back onto our regular schedule, which goes to the point of announcements. Every Saturday from 9 to 11, there's the Fairfax Food Pantry, and that's at the Fairfax Community Church, 2398 Sir Francis Drake Boulevard, and volunteers are always needed for that event. It's a terrific event. If you need food, no questions asked, go and get a bag of food. If you want to be of service to the members of your community, certainly go down and help out. It's fulfilling, it's fun, and it's a good thing for community. There is one vacancy on the volunteer board for a full 3-year term to November 30th, 2015. That's being addressed a little later on this agenda. One vacancy on the Affordable Housing Commission for a full 4-year term. There is a vacancy on the Fairfax Youth Commission for any youth living in the Ross Valley between 14 and 19 years of age. There is an open slot for somebody of those qualifications on the Youth Commission. There is a vacancy for a youth commissioner to serve on the Parks and Rec Commission for a 2-year term. That is somebody, a kid who will sit on the Parks and Rec. A lot of those programs have to do with youth, so that's a good place to be also. There's a vacancy on the Open Space Committee for a full 4-year term. There is a Fairfax Festival poster art submissions. They're due April 15th at Town Hall, so if you'd like to try your hand at designing this year's Fairfax Festival poster, that's your deadline, April 15th. The Fairfax Festival and Parade this year is the second weekend in June, which this year is June 8th and 9th, 2013. And also at Town Hall, if you want to be in the parade applications are right there and available. So go down to Town Hall, fill out an application, and think up a good thing for your float. The Farmers Market is coming back and will be starting Wednesday, May 1st. I think it's the 6th, right? Okay, Wednesday, May 6th is the first Farmers Market of the season. And April 27th is Take Back Day. And this will be up at the Pavilion parking lot, even though on the agenda it says Good Earth location. It's at the Pavilion parking lot. And this is where you can bring electronic wastes, shredding, medicines, right? You're laughing, and electronic, yeah.
Right, e-waste, paper shredding, and unused medicines. And I made a mistake, it is May 1st. I think in one of our things we said May 6th, but it's the first Wednesday of May, which is May 1st, so I apologize for that.
Okay. That's the farmer's market, yes. And April 27th at the Pavilion lot is Take Back Day. Basically, this is paper shredding, e-waste, unused drugs that should not be put down, that flush down the toilet or anything like that. It keeps them out of the environment, and that's actually pretty darn important. So bring them there.
Prescription drugs.
Sorry?
Prescription drugs.
Prescription drugs, yeah.
Prescription. If you have some old Advil sitting.
Oh, right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, can I? April 27th.
April 27th at the Pavilion lot.
Can I, just two things. One, on that, could we use our 2 banner spots, and if you have more in mind, this really has to get out to the public. John is correct. The thought of the amount of prescription and non-prescription drugs that are not being digested, that can't be digested by our sewage treatment facility, and flows right out to the bay. This has been going on for decades. And so this was an extraordinary part of the contract that we signed with Marin Sand. This is our once a year, I'm gathering, shot at this. So publicizing it is extraordinarily important. And if we could just sign it up, that would be great. And the other, I would ask to agendize the Fairfax Youth Commission. We have generally, or I have intimated that perhaps we should think about folding this into the focus program, and we should have a conversation about that at council.
David, were you suggesting using the banner spots to promote the Take Back Day?
Yeah, the ones at the beginning of town and
Right.
in the park.
So I have had a conversation with Marin Sanitary in regards to that, and them partnering in creating one of those banners.
And if they wish to buy the thing flying over the street from us, I'm sure we can make a good deal
We'll
for them,
see.
which would be really good.
All right, so is that it on announcements? Are there any other announcements that are not on here that council members know about? Hearing none, I will move on to reports and presentations. Number 4 is a quarterly report from the General Plan Implementation Committee, which is an oral report by Bruce Ackerman, who's the chair. So take it away, Bruce.
Thank you, council members. So this will be brief. We've this quarter, first of all, I'd like to thank the council. We'd like to thank the council for approving our draft bylaws. So we now are done with our bookkeeping and ready to get started. We've been working on our core mission, which is going through the priorities of the many programs in the general plan, and are in the process of distributing a matrix of the portion of the programs that are assigned to all the different committees in town. You folks on the council have already received yours, but the various other groups that are involved in the implementation of the general plan will be receiving their portion of these things, and that's what we see as our primary role, is to initiate discussion with the various groups and try to prioritize this large amount of work that we can keep doing. And then one of the tasks of the General Plan Implementation Committee is to also be, for a time, the Climate Action Committee. So in that role, we have been working on the Fairfax Climate Action Plan, and that's in progress. That draft is in progress, and we've gotten a lot of help from the Marin Climate Energy Partnership that produced a working draft to begin with, but we are, of course, modifying that considerably to make it applicable to Fairfax. One of the things that's in progress is to pull all of the pieces from the general plan that refer to climate action and incorporate that into a climate action plan so that it's complete. And there's a second, we've already had one greenhouse gas inventory that something that MCEP is an intern from MCEP is working with the town to accomplish, as our second greenhouse gas inventory. So I think that concludes my report right now. If there are any questions.
Any questions from council?
Great job. Thank you very much. I'm excited. The Climate Action Plan is something that I know I've been poking at for, like, why don't we have one of those yet? So thank you.
Well,
thank you. I know there's been a long time coming on that, and I appreciate that the time has been taken to do it right. So thank you.
Well, thank you. You know, it's a real concern of mine. That's a big passion of mine, and I feel like Fairfax is in a position to really take the leadership, as we have in so many other areas, take the leadership in terms of dealing with climate in a really community-based way. So that's the hallmark, I think, of what's written in the general plan and what will be in the climate action plan in that regard. So it should be interesting.
Well, great. Thank you very much, Bruce.
Thank you.
Unless there's other questions. Okay. All right. Well, great. And see you in 3 months. Next time on the agenda is open time for public expression. There's a 3-minute time limit per person. If you wish to address the council, please approach the podium here and state your name and address. Individuals have 3 minutes to speak, 5 minutes if you're representing a group. This is the time set aside for individuals wishing to address the council on matters not listed on the agenda. State law, Government Code Section 54954.2, provides that the council is not permitted to take action and strictly limits the right of the council to discuss any unagendized item unless it can be demonstrated to be of an emergency nature or the need to take immediate action arose after posting the agenda. So, open time for public expression, please. Thanks.
Mark Bell, 63 Dominga. At the last regular meeting, I had asked about the sign that at popped up at Napa and Dominga, and before I had finished my coffee the next morning, I looked down the street and it was gone. Who said that the town mechanism takes time? I was like in shock. I had to keep like walking. I went back inside the house and came out a few more times to look, you know. It was recently replaced by a slow children playing sign, which is much more attractive. So again, congratulations, and I'd like to just thank you all. And then the other thing I thought of, I'm just a little curious, on 21, is that regarding the grand jury report that we should poison our watershed?
There are some details about that in that report, yes.
Okay, so that's going to be covered in 21?
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Yes.
My name is Steve Franks. I live at 19 Willow Avenue, and here I go again. On November 7th, I had a chance to express my concerns regarding Good Earth's non-compliance with their use permit. Larry, John, and Ryan all agreed that there should be an ordinance passed that would address non-compliance as well as times and amounts of deliveries. It was fairly important at that time. David did not agree and stated he personally knew the owners and they would now follow the permit rules unless he was sadly mistaken. He was sadly mistaken, unfortunately. That was the best intention I'm sure, David, you had, but unfortunately it didn't come through. And by your decision, I am back once again having to be here because they have not followed their ordinance. The time of deliveries has been reported to the police February 4th at 4 a.m., 4:15. This morning there was more trucks in the parking lot than they are allowed by their permit, so they are still currently not following their permit. And that's it. Thank you very much. I will not give up on my neighborhood. I have a family to raise, and it would be nice to get some sleep one of these days. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there more?
We have a date where that's being addressed in front of the Planning Commission, correct?
Yes, it's on the agenda for April 18th, regular Planning Commission meeting, where we will be addressing the requests for revisions to their conditions of approval, and we will be also addressing the truck delivery issue.
Thank you.
7 o'clock in this room. And agenda
once again,
goes
the
out the
date?
Friday before.
I had several letters that got lost in the file cabinet somewhere that I was hoping to pass on.
Actually, I did find we did have your letter of March 20th that went into the file for the Planning Commission. That's why it didn't get to me while I was out sick. And we are aware of Mr. Frank's most recent complaint today. There were 2 trucks in the parking lot. It's not clear whether both trucks were unloading or not, but this is sort of the nuanced discussion that we will be taking up. And I must ask thank Mr. Franks, actually. He provided a very thorough letter. And we're hoping that we can find some accommodation for, in fact, more trucks after 6, between 6 and 7, and we will be addressing the issue of the one allowed truck between 5 and 6 and the occurrences of additional trucks on the property in contrast to what was supposed to be the conditions of use for truck delivery early on. So we're going to be, the good news is we have a complete application. It's on the agenda for Planning Commission that we will be addressing this.
Thank you.
Great. I have several of those letters that I don't know if you got to read them or if they were given to you, but I have a few copies if you would like to, if I can pass them on to you. Great.
You pass them to the town clerk.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate everybody's concern.
Okay. Are there other members of the public wishing to speak at open time about anything not on the agenda? Okay, well, I will close open time. Next, we have council reports and comments. These are brief announcements and reports on council member assignments, committees, and activities, including reports from meetings that were attended at town expense. Most of them, the town doesn't have any expense, but that's the wording that I read every time. Anyway, we can start on your end, David. How's that?
Sure. Like all of us, I attended the MCCMC dinner, which you hosted with David Parisi here in town. I also attended the Ledge Committee which I'm going to get to in a moment, fire board meeting with you, John. And just to let you know that I will be flying to Pasadena at Dark 100 on Friday for the League of Cities Environmental Quality Committee meeting with one of my colleagues from Novato. One of the things that we've had sort of a conversation about up here from time to time is, what do you do when you're on a committee and you're unsure of how your colleagues might view a particular issue? And one came up at the Ledge Committee, and I communicated with the two differing parties, and it dealt with a prevailing wage issue. And the carpenters union, and unions generally, in charter cities, this is a bill being carried by Darrell Steinberg, the head of the State Assembly, State Senate. In a charter city, can it makes my mind just crack just thinking about it. SB 7 would prohibit a charter city from receiving or using state funding or financial assistance for a construction project if the city has a voter-approved charter provision or ordinance that authorizes a contractor to not comply with state prevailing wage requirements on local construction projects funded by non-state city funds. Let's just have a quiz on that one. The union wishes to, of course, have the prevailing wage ordinance, to have the prevailing wage be triggered. In contrast, the League of Cities does not, and only because, and they were very conflicted about this, was the issue of local control. And this would take local control away from that. Because we're not a charter city, we're a general law city, and didn't have an immediate dog in the fight, and because I had no clear vision as to how the council would view on this, I abstained from that vote at the MC Ledge Committee, along with Novato, explaining to them that I would bring this issue back. Now, of course, the ship has sailed at the Ledge Committee, but that does not mean that if the council wished to have this agendized in May, I couldn't rip out a nice 4-paragraph memo for all of us to consider, and then move forward on a vote on that, and express that in an individual letter, let's say from the mayor, to Senator Steinberg's office. So I brought this back for your advice and consideration. Again, the issue would not affect us because we're not a charter city, but the question is whether we want to step forward and support the concept of the prevailing wage, which this council has always been very strongly in favor of, or this conflicting issue raised by the League of Cities with regard to local control.
Well, anybody have any thoughts to start out?
Excuse me. The only question you can consider is whether to put those issues on the agenda. You can't have a discussion about it now.
That's right. And that's all I wish to know is from you whether you wish me to agendize this and to write a comprehensive memo on it, or not.
I feel, we've taken positions on, a living wage and that sort of thing, which I suspect is somewhat in the opposite direction that some of these cities who are seeking local control are about. We don't have a dog in that particular fight. In some ways, I'm inclined to decline. Anybody else have thoughts on that?
I don't know enough about it. I mean, I think it should go on for discussion.
I'm not going to be here. Yes, definitely bring it on. make the agenda one item longer.
Thank you for that, Pam.
I mean, I'm always a fan of more information rather than less, so.
More information that
Yeah.
you won't be reading.
Yes.
And?
My sentiments exactly.
Okay,
No, yes,
then with
I
that,
would like
I'll
to
write you
learn
guys
more.
up. I'll write you guys up a memorandum, and we can have that discussion next time.
Yeah, I look forward to it.
Strictly from
Yes,
a
sir.
staff perspective of future issues, is there a council policy governing when these type of things should be brought to the council? Is it just like one council member could bring it up, or you have to bring it up at these?
No, I don't. Can you think of one? I don't think there is a policy on this.
We do, actually. We have an agenda-setting ordinance in Fairfax. which gives council members discretion to add matters to the calendar, provided if it's not town business, that town business would get priority.
Is that what you're asking him?
Yeah, I think I was, well, Brian, I think I remember that part of the ordinance, but just in general, when a council member is at a different committee or a League of California's committee, those type of policy issues, can the council member, is it easier that they just ask to put it on the agenda, or is it something that has to be broached first? Because sometimes those things are time sensitive, you only meet once a month, and then you get in this dilemma if you miss a certain time, and so I just thought if you wanted a broader discussion to come back with you along with Councilmember Weinstein's
I think
request.
generally, the mayor sets the agenda, but what we have here is basically anybody can put something forward, and if we're clogged for time, and something's got to get bounced.
I think you're asking, what do you do as a council member when you're at a meeting and you're unsure how your council colleagues would view a particular issue and the position that the town should be taking, and you're up against that vote. I think that's what you're asking.
The original question, in other words.
Well, actually, you stated it much better than I did.
Well, and I think the answer to the question, I recall I don't know if Larry remembers. You remember?
Remember well.
I'm not sure what the issue was.
It was on TAM funding for the SMART train, which TAM took $7 million from local road funds and shifted it to SMART. And there were a group of us that objected to that because we thought the money should be taken from the freeway projects, which are 10 times the funding for local roads.
But we don't have a policy on this.
There is no policy, because when we appoint someone to represent us, we have effectively delegated our authority to that person.
But I remember, maybe it was in this conversation or not, I remember Councilmember Tremaine saying that, a council member may have a particular viewpoint, but the council member should try to reflect what the majority of the council would be saying if all 5 of us were, heaven forbid, actually sitting in that room. But there is no active policy on that. But I thought Lou's comment on it was, if you fail to abide by that sort of informal policy, you as a council member may soon find yourself no longer on that committee. So it's sort of a self-policing thing.
Well, I just think legally, once that appointment's made, we've delegated our authority. And I suppose the only way to police it would be to recall the person from that assignment. But I don't think this council has authority to direct somebody it's delegated authority to vote in a certain way, because the rest of the council hasn't attended all the meetings leading up to the vote. So anyway, it did come up in the context of TAM, and looking back on that vote, tough vote, but I think it was a vote that needed to be made at the time.
Yeah, I think that's entirely correct, and I remember that conversation myself, and really, what else have you a choice to do? As you say, in your particular thing on the legislative committee, that ship has sailed. They've taken the vote, you abstained, and brought it back here to us, but
Fairfax now could, as Novato could, if it chose, to send a letter to Senator Steinberg expressing our opinion after we receive our report and have a conversation about it.
I suppose that's, an additional thing for our agenda here, but in terms of affecting your vote on the Ledge Committee, we have delegated authority to you.
And, just to label it, there are, I don't know, a half a dozen votes, sometimes more, on different pieces of legislation. But again, where there's, you're not sure, that's when I think, and I think it's the only time I've ever done it, where I've brought it back and want to see what you guys think about it. And although the ship has sailed in that committee, I'm sure, the senator's office would be receptive to our letter.
Okay, well, that's when it's time to bring it back here for later discussion.
And I think in general, it's up to our discretion. And I know that for me, a lot of times we have alternates, and if I have a question and something's up on an agenda for, an item, I will, contact one other council member and say, this is an item that's coming up. What do you, I mean, I don't know that we need an official policy. I mean, I think our official policy is that you've got the discretion to use your vote, and if you choose to also consult other council members on a vote, I think that makes sense as well.
Sounds good.
One other council member, so you stay outside of the Browning. Okay, are we done with that one?
Oh, yeah.
Good.
You done?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, take it away, Pam.
Other than our number of special meetings over the last month, I also met with Kelly Smith, our new market manager, having had a long history with the farmers market here. Offered myself up to her to help her guide some kind of marketing ideas and maybe a press release that could go out jointly between the market and the town, and had a nice meeting with her. I think she's going to do a great job. And it is the first the first Wednesday in May is indeed May 1st. Just to clarify that one more time. I attended the MCC. MC hosted here in Fairfax. Well done, John, choosing that speaker. And I also attended a Cheetah USA retreat up in Sebastopol. With the two other Cheetah Slow communities in the United States, which was good. And I think that we have a committee member who's sort of willing to take the reins of that until we get another council member in my role there. So that should go well. And my only other announcement is to say thank you. I'm delighted that this is my last meeting. I'm probably not supposed to say that. It's been a joy. It's been a joy to serve, and I'm also happy to be moving on. And I can't imagine a better staff and a better council to serve with, and certainly a better town to dedicate an extraordinary amount of time to. So I'm thankful.
Me?
You or me, either way.
Not yet.
Not on the town's expense.
I also attended the MCCMC, which did feature David Parisi, who was just here, and he reviewed a lot of the progress we've made with our bike and pedestrian safety plan. Gave us a great slideshow showing the bike lane on Drake that was put in that was the federal stimulus money that was put in out by White Hill School with the buffer between traffic and bike. He also gave us a great slideshow on the bike spine, which should be getting installed here in the next couple months, hopefully. So it was good to actually see our work actually come to fruition. I also attended the Marin Energy Authority meeting, the last Marin Energy Authority meeting. I've got a Marin Energy Authority meeting tomorrow, which promises to be interesting because the authority is having its yearly meeting on whether it should raise its rates to match PG&E's recent raise in its rates. And I'm not going to ask you for direction on how I should vote on that. And I also attended the Community Media Center of Marin, a board meeting which I attend every month. That's actually a private nonprofit that was spun off from the Marin Telecommunications Agency. And this is the institution which actually runs the video broadcasting that's actually taking place right now. Our cameraman, our camera operator, Damien, is actually from CMCM. And so these are the folks that are actually handling public media here in Marin. So it's a very interesting board to serve on, and we're hoping to actually expand it so that all cities can broadcast their meetings directly to the public. And I think for purposes of our meeting, we might want to consider doing what Ross does, which allows residents to call in or email in questions while we're in session. So that is something I'm actually going to bring to the council in a future meeting. I think Ross actually takes phone calls, and so there's ways of verifying who's calling and so on. But that might be an interesting addition to our meetings and also make our open democracy even more open, maybe too open. So those were the main meetings for the last month. Thanks.
Now, you're spared, Renee.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
How many of our Marin County cities are actually televising?
There's probably maybe 4, not that many. The majority of them don't broadcast. And there's some that don't have the quality. We have multi-cameras in here. We have a 4-camera setup, which really improves the quality of our broadcasts. So you want to make the broadcasts good enough quality so that people are, captured by the broadcast.
Yeah, and I think it's a good thing for democracy, as we discussed.
We make better decisions.
Yeah,
when people
and
want to get more information.
I've tried to also encourage the school board, for instance, to do that because, frankly, especially with parents, it's difficult to get down there and sit through a big, long meeting, and, if you can, especially if something is keyed to whenever it is, and you can look that up and watch it online, it helps communication. You're not relying on rumors. It's a good thing overall. I myself was out of town some of the time, but I went looking through my notes. I, of course, was also at the MCCMC meeting here at Fairfax, where basically these meetings are mayors and council members from other towns in Marin County, and that's what we always see when we see this crazy acronym MCCMC. And basically we talked about safe versus schools and a lot of different things and how you go about changing the climate where kids feel safe, parents feel safe, riding on bikes and walking around the community. And in talking with many other council people from other cities after that, it was very eye-opening for them, and this is one of the ways that Fairfax can act as an example, and we kind of figure out how things work in terms of bettering our community, and then we get emulated around, and it feels good to be a part of Fairfax, as I hope it feels good. Fairbud, which is a regular meeting. Meals on Wheels, I went around and saw what they did. I also attended the Green Bay Corridor interchange, this thing next to the ferry that's you've seen in the papers a lot. I'm an alternate on that board, and so I attended their first meeting. There's another one is coming up April 8th. Another thing that is also related to the Transportation Authority of Marin is at their executive committee meeting next April 8th in the afternoon, there is an electronic ride-sharing beta program that I am looking to try to get going around Fairfax and possibly the Fairfax-San Anselmo San Rafael corridor. And this is basically a very cheap and effective way that the carbon footprint of transportation can be lowered to around 20% of what cars usually do. Public transportation is sometimes in the 75 to 80% percentile, so it does potentially have the chance to reduce carbon by quite a bit. Anyway, this is TAM is participating in a beta program where they're trying to figure out ride sharing for companies and at the ferry terminal and at colleges, and I thought it would be a good fit since we have a lot of people who sometimes just want to drive from their house down to town. This would make it efficient and attractive for somebody to even use their car, or maybe an electric car from Good Earth or something like that, to basically make the rounds and give people rides from the hills into town and back into their houses, and so decrease the number of car trips used. So we'll see how well that works, and that is coming before the executive committee on the 8th. I went to a regular TAM meeting also, which nothing outrageous happened, but that's my report on meetings. I can answer any questions, but I've talked enough probably. So that concludes our reports, and next up is the town manager report.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, if I could have our planning director, Jim Moore, make a real quick, brief update on the Planning Commission and DRC and how well that's worked combining the two entities.
Thank you.
Thanks, Garrett. Okay, I'm going to try and be brief. If this is, we're now 1 year into having combined the functions of the Planning Commission with the Design Review Board, otherwise known as DRB. If you recall, last year, you had the first reading in January, second reading in February, it went into effect in March, so March of this year was a 1 year. So I sent out, and let me just reiterate, during that period of 1 year, we had 11 Planning Commission meetings. We had 1 month in December where we didn't have to meet, we didn't have anything on the agenda. We heard 34 use permit applications, and of those 34, 12 included design review, okay? We saved, those 12 design review hearings would have been in approximately 6 meetings if the design review board had met alone. And if you remember the really quick and dirty analysis of savings that I had done of staff time, those 6 meetings in terms of staff time, minutes keepers, public works setup and takedown, reallocated about $9,000 in staff savings by combining the bodies, and not to mention savings to the applicants who don't have to pay their professionals to prepare 17 more sets of plans, it cuts down trees, come to new meetings, et cetera, et cetera. So we saved, the applicants saved. So what I did was I sent out an email to the planning commissioners asking them, do you feel that combining the functions of the PC and DRB has worked out well over the last year? I asked them to respond to me individually, not collectively, so we didn't violate the Brown Act with a serial meeting. And I'm going to give you a brief synopsis of their very brief answers, starting with the chair, Shelley Hamilton. She answered yes with 3 exclamation points, said it's a much more efficient use of time, frees up much needed staff resources without degrading the decision-making process. And I appreciate the integrated approach to design and approval process. Shelley Lamont, our vice chair, said, having been on both the DRB and the PC, and now being on the PC with the combined functions, I have to say, what took us so long? There is not considerably more work or considerably different skills required, and I'm really glad that we could streamline the process both for applicants and the staff. Peter Lax, who just stepped down last month, said, I would have to say we did not have enough combined Planning Commission design review projects to really have much of an opinion. The 1 or 2 I remember were very simple and minimal design review functions for us to weigh, and those seemed to go well. Morgan Hall, there have been very few items before the PC for design review. One of them was a project of mine from which I had to recuse myself. In any event, I initially thought it was a good idea, and nothing in the interim has dissuaded me otherwise. The DRB has nothing really to offer that the PC has not, and the new configuration saves time and money. Laura Caroline, who was actually chair of the Design Review Board at the time you combined the functions, said, I think the process of combining PC and DRB has worked well so far. We didn't have a lot of projects to review last year, and most of them were smaller remodeling projects, so I think the combined process worked well in those cases. And then finally, Brandon Ketchum said, I think the combination has worked well. It has not added time to the Planning Commission meetings and has saved staff from managing a separate commission and staffing 6 to 12 additional meetings. Bottom line, this is a much more efficient process that benefits the town as well as the applicant. It also is beneficial to consider and discuss the project as a whole, rather than in the past where many of the commission's discussions ended with the idea that maybe that would be addressed, something would be addressed at the Design Review Board. That's 6 out of the 7, and I believe at your last meeting when you were hearing from the applicants for town council, our other final planning commissioner, Barbara Kohler, weighed in that she thought the process was going well. So that concludes my report. The only comment I would make for those people that thought that there was fewer than the actual number of hearings, I think it's because it's so intuitive to have it linked that you hardly notice that it's on the radar. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I might point out that many of these arguments were made by yourself at the outset before we voted to do this.
And I'm very grateful that it came to be.
Yeah, I'm sure, yeah. And thank you very much for your efforts to that end. Is there an additional report from you? Okay. So at that point, we are at consent, and I have had a request to remove 5 from consent. Are there any other items on consent?
No, other than to once again thank Tony for her Herculean efforts and just point out on page 2 in the middle where I state that there would be an opportunity for residents to get rid of this is the electronic waste, the take-back program that we were talking about a few minutes ago on April 27th. I may well have spoken about that, but I know that I spoke about the pills, the unused, so just to clarify the minutes on that. And thank you so much for this.
Mayor?
Yes.
On page 2, there's just a correction. 1, 2, 3, 4. On the 5th paragraph up, it quotes me, second line, about commercial customers had a higher, it should say diversion rate, not conversion rate. So that was just a correction on that. And then on the budget report, the budget report refers to measure F. It should be measure I at this point. And the other thing I wanted to point out to staff is that we should convene the Measure I Oversight Committee prior to our next budget session or our budget sessions, which we're required to do under Measure I. So I don't know what I can do to expedite that, but I think we're going to have to post applications and see if we can get some folks on that committee soon. Please.
We don't have people.
I do not think we have an oversight committee that's been convened yet.
All right, then. There are other items on consent. Do I have a motion to approve the Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. I'd like to open public comment on anything on the consent calendar, except for item 5. So hearing none, I'll close that. And yes, Jim.
Yeah, I think Renee and I both are recusing ourselves from voting on item number 7. How's that?
Okay, that would be appropriate. So, do I hear a motion?
I'd move approval with the changes noted.
Okay. Okay, so we have a motion, Bragman's, second, Weinsoff. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, that's unanimous. Okay, well, item 5, which is discussing consideration of the expansion of the volunteer board. At the request of the chair of the volunteer board, I pulled this from consent, and I guess in front of us is an option of expanding the size of the volunteer board from 7 to 9 people because we have right now additional applicants for the volunteer board, and at first it seemed like that's great. One of the issues, however, I know from working various boards and committees is that if you don't get a quorum, you don't get anything done. And if we expanded the size of the volunteer board to either 8 or 9, then 5 people would need to show up to get a quorum, or right now it's 4. In the interest, I did talk to the applicants, and in all practicality, if we kept it at 7, then we have 2 applicants for that empty 7th slot, as well as a board member re-upping who is present here also. Of the other 2 applicants, if we appointed one as an alternate, then we could keep the quorum level at 4 and have an alternate who, gets a vote if not all 7 show up, which is, often the case, not always. But, and that seems to be a good way to move it forward with the people that we've got. I mean, obviously, there could probably be more than one alternate. I don't know if that's the case. If other people are interested in volunteer board slot, it's a great board to be on, do a lot of things that people like, and you get to help your community in a good way, very fulfilling. So we have the appointment of volunteer interview and appointment of volunteer board applicants just after consent. So I would like to, well, I guess it isn't a move to do no change on that item, but I would like to bring that to discussion to my fellow council members.
Yeah, are we then suggesting that we would actually, that we would appoint that we would appoint one of the applicants today as an alternate instead of as a,
That's correct.
and keep this, okay. That makes sense. If they're amenable with it, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if that flies, I mean, do we have to do something to create an alternate spot on the volunteer board?
Well,
I haven't read the bylaws closely
yeah,
enough
I think the
recently.
bylaws are pretty flexible because you could have created the extra members, but it's true, the chair of the volunteer board indicated maybe a better alternative was to keep the board at 7 and appoint an alternate, and then their recommendations still applied in terms of reappointing a term that's expiring, appointing Mary Ann O'Sullivan, and then appointing Mark Solomons as the alternate. So what you would just do is you would basically be appointing the alternate just like you would have done to take action to expand the board.
So we take no action on number 5 and then move right on to appointments?
Sure, you could do that. I think, well, I guess your action would be you'd be
Unless
appointing
our
an
action is
alternate. You're appointing an alternate.
Yes.
You're creating an alternate.
To establish an alternate
Yes,
space.
that'd be
Yeah.
correct.
So, well, I would entertain a motion to that effect. If there's more, and public comment would be useful.
We do have public comment.
Yes.
I think it's a good idea. It kind of kills two birds with one stone and doesn't add a burden to the volunteers as far as getting their quorum. It's going to be easier for them to get a quorum. So I think it's a nice, efficient way of handling it.
Mm-hmm. Are there any thoughts or comments from the public on this issue? Hearing none, I will close public comment. And
I'm happy to move that we make a position for an alternate on the volunteer board.
Second.
okay, so we have a motion Hartwell, second Bragman. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great, we have an alternate slot. So moving right along to the interview and appointment of candidates to serve on the volunteer board for a full 3-year term. And I guess this item doesn't say it all in that we have one candidate who is reapplying for an expired term, and then we have a candidate for an open seat, and then we have a candidate for the alternate seat. So why don't you come forward and all of the above, yeah.
I'm Mark Solomons, and I've been in Fairfax since 2010. I just want to understand if you're saying if all 7, or if I was there as an alternate, it seems to me it would only be if there were only 3, I would then make the 4th to make the quorum. Is that more, I mean, to be a voting member of whatever decisions are being made?
To be a voting member on whatever decision is being made. If any one member of that 7-person board was absent, you would serve as the alternate
Very clear.
to that person. Does that answer your question? Okay. Are there any questions from my fellow council members of Mark?
Sure, why don't you tell us why you'd like to serve on the board?
Okay. Well, I have volunteered in various positions. I've been part of the Fairfax Pantry here. I was part of Fairbucks, promoting Fairbucks when that was going on, initially getting it into the public. And I've volunteered on various political campaigns here in the Ross Valley School District. I've been out in San Geronimo Valley and working with Spawn. And more recently, I've been a parent education volunteer at Manor School the last 2 years. And doing community service hours for Spawn and San Geronimo, is one way to find a volunteer, and they may even then want to come back and participate, which was my case in both Spawn and San Geronimo. So with the people that may come to the Fairfax Pantry, we may find them, enjoying it and coming back. So I think it's great to make use of the community service hours to find volunteers as well as just promote general volunteerism. I've also managed volunteers in a position in Oakland when I worked for a mental health advocacy agency, and so I've done it professionally. And I look back at having been a volunteer when I was in high school at convalescent homes, and now I'm in the elder care field. So it's really wonderful, I think, to encourage high school students and get them engaged. I want to echo what I learned from reading Renee's biography, that just to encourage more proactive participation here in Fairfax. So I'd be very glad to be part of the volunteer board.
And you don't care whether you're a alternate or the grand poobah of, I mean, it doesn't matter to you whether you're the alternate or the formal appointed one, however we want to mishmash words?
Can you speak up just a little bit?
Oh, God, I have to say that again? You don't care whether you're appointed as the alternate or the...
Well, I mean, I don't. No, I don't. I mean, I feel like the other candidate has participated in the volunteer board. I have not even attended a meeting yet, so I think that would make more sense. You know, and I'm happy to be there and fill in the shoes if someone isn't. And also didn't mention that I think I'm really interested in the garden being here. I don't even know about the fact that that was something that the Fairfax Volunteers has worked on. I live in Canyon Village, and I understand Spirit Wiseman has been very involved and instrumental in getting that going, and I think it'd be wonderful to encourage more use of that if there's still a need. So I look forward to learning what needs to be done. So
there's always a need for gardens.
Are we voting on these one at a time, or are we voting on
let's interview
in
everybody.
mass? Okay.
Yeah. Do you want to come up, Marianne?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks. I'm Marianne O'Sullivan, and I live at 22 Madrone Court, and would love to be on the volunteer board. I've not always, but most of my life, as an adult life, have participated in some volunteer project or another, and it's always been what I love doing the best. You know, I pick things that I want to do, you know, and I was saying to Mark that I've noticed that friends of mine will say, "Oh, that's so interesting. How did you get involved in that?" And the idea of a volunteer board that's about supporting volunteer activity in Fairfax is very appealing to me. So not just volunteering, but also supporting other volunteers to come on board and make it attractive. I've always been particularly interested in my professional life and in my volunteer work in low-income folks. And so working at the food bank has been fabulous. I see Larry there every Saturday morning. And would love to see, you know, as part of my work on the volunteer board, is there other work in Fairfax to do with low-income folks here where there could be more support from the board and the town? So that's kind of my story, I think. So, right.
Thank you. Questions?
I'm not. No.
I was just going to say, I looked at your resume, and I was shocked. I didn't know who I was hauling vegetables around with all this time.
It's long,
Very impressive resume, really.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I've had a lot of time to do all that stuff.
It's really, really nice.
Thanks,
I'm going to look forward after public comment, we do our dance, to ask Mr. Solomons to join as well as the alternate, along with Marianne. I must say that I served for a couple of years with Marianne on the Community Action Marin Board, and to say that we are getting a diamond of a member here is quite the understatement of the week.
Thanks, Tim.
Okay. And I would be remiss if I didn't ask you, Anya, since you're reapplying for your current position, and I guess I know you pretty well because we've been working together for a number of years, but
So why don't you just use my whiny voice and tell me about me?
well, you do it better than anybody, and you know I want to. You waited
I've
this
been
long?
on the board for I don't know how long. It's one of the things that makes me joyous about the city that I love so much. And I will take this opportunity again to thank all of you that are here for everything you contribute. The board does wonderful work. with devoted people, and it's my pleasure to serve. And I have a great resume, too. And I would like to encourage you. I love that thing that's happening on some date somewhere. I think it's the 27th at the Pavilion. I think it's remarkable that we're finally doing something about taking back old drugs. It's just essential. I hope we do it more than once. And I would encourage us to really, as Larry said, really get the news out. And one of the things that I'm active in is Nextdoor, which is a digital community which has done remarkable things just recently. And I'd be happy to post it on that, but I'd like to, and really encourage people. It's just a criminal what we're doing. So, are there any questions? All right.
Thank you.
Good meeting.
Well, now that we've interviewed our three candidates, do I hear a motion?
Let me try to do this. I'm sitting on the fence, Anya. I would take great delight in nominating Anya Chandler for a lifetime appointment to the volunteer board. And
I think all we can do is the current.
For the current term. To appoint Marianne O'Sullivan as the, the regular candidate for the 3-year term for the vacancy, and welcome Mr. Solomons again into the community. Thank you, and ask you to be the alternate, which I suspect, like all of these meetings, you will not be an alternate. You will be an integral part of the decision-making process.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion Weinsoff, a second Bragman, and do I hear ayes for this?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, aye.
And it's unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, and now moving on to the regular agenda, we have 4 items left. It's not even close to 10 o'clock. So next up, is number 18, discussion consideration of potential projects for the State Department of Parks and Recreation grant funding. Adoption of resolution number 13-18, a resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Fairfax authorizing the filing of an application for grant funds for the per capita grant program under the California Clean Water, Clean Air, Safe Neighborhoods, Parks, and Coastal Protection Act of 2002. And adoption of resolution 13-18, a resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Fairfax authorizing the filing of an application for grant funds to the Robertsburg Harris Block Grant Program under the California Clean Water, Clean Air, Safe Neighborhood, Parks, and Coastal Protection Act of 2002. And just so you know what all that means, we have a report from our town manager. It's in much simpler terms, please.
Simpler terms, okay. As background, the council had previously approved a project with this grant funding from the California Department of Parks and Recreation. It's actually 2 grants, about $105,000 for per capita grant program, and about $20,000 from, call it Roberti Zeeberg Harris Block Grant, we'll just refer to it as RHC program. Project originally was designated to construct a pedestrian walkway from the pedestrian bridge adjacent to the Women's Club to the pavilion. However, that funding does require that the town acquire or own all the right-of-way for the project, and it must acquire it voluntarily from the property owner. So that being said, we met with the adjacent property owner. He is actually willing to consider a donation of up to 10 feet from his property line to property. The problem with that is we're really not too sure if that's enough property to make this path work. We would have to actually spend some funding to do some engineered drawing to see whether that would work. So rather than do that, staff thought it might be appropriate if we come to council and see if there are other projects you want to consider, or other projects maybe of a higher priority at this time. It should be noted that the funds are somewhat restricted. Per capita funds can only be used for capital improvements for recreational programs or facilities, and RZH funds can be used for improvements that help create additional recreational activities or opportunities. So we did meet with the Parks and Recreation Committee, and we discussed alternative projects, At the time, we recommended that we use up to the 25% to help pay for staff time to manage the actual projects and administrative costs of the program, and that we actually allocate about $15,000 to complete the Little League restrooms, ball field restrooms. You should note that we're not sure if that's going to be enough. We have another $15,000. We have 30 in the pot. We might need a little bit more. We really won't know until it gets going. But that being said, if that stayed constant, then we have about $63,500 in per capita funding and $15,000 funding from the RZH funds. And so what Park is recommending is that priority for the capital improvement funds be allocated to refinishing the gym floor there in the pavilion, installing, and whatever's left, installing a catering kitchen in pavilion, and then if there's any funding left, then painting and cleaning the rafters in the pavilion. In terms of with regards to the RZH grant, we're actually asking if we could use the funds to make the stage here in the Women's Club more accessible and available for actual programming. Concept would be we would remove the permanent dais and the wall and replace it with more movable type furniture that we could set up for meetings, have a curtain for the front, curtain in the back, maybe drop the logo hanging from the curtain, increase the sound system, some other things we'd have to figure out. One of the important things is because of the stage height, we'd have to install an ADA lift. And so the thought pattern is if we did that, then obviously this could be used for more programming, might generate a little more rental revenue. Same, obviously, installing a kitchen and pavilion, you might be able to generate a little bit more revenue. And so one of the caveats is we're not too sure what everything's going to cost. So once we get there to the point, at that point, then we'll have a little more flexibility. You might have to pick and choose what we can actually get. But for the grant, we can put in something fairly generic enough and to handle all those costs. So our recommendation is we receive direction from the council on what you want us to do. If you decide that you prefer to proceed with the existing project, you really don't need to do anything. We'll just proceed in that path. The only caveat is any changes we need to submit to the state by June 30th this year, and all projects must be completed by March 31st, 2015. And so with that, it concludes the staff report.
Okay, well, this is all very interesting, and we might be able to put this to good use, but I shouldn't go first.
I'll go first.
Okay.
I mean, I think that all the projects have merit, and I think, making the improvements in the pavilion are, it's not only going to be good for events, but actually the pavilion is our public safety gathering spot. So adding the catering kitchen, I think, is a good idea. Not only, I think that's going to help generate revenue, but it's also going to increase its utility if there is an emergency. So I think that's a very good plan. I also like the idea of making this stage more flexible, because I've heard from numerous people that have appeared here that this wall behind us really impedes the function of the stage. So, I mean, they all sound really good, what the Parks and Recs Commission came up with. There's one other thing, not that we need to add it to this particular item, but I've talked to Community Media Center of Marin about adding so that we can project PowerPoint and integrate it more into our meetings. And that, if we did the project that's proposed of making this a more flexible stage, that would actually help us do that, because it would give us we could change the angle that we're sitting at. And anyway, I think it's all sounds pretty good.
On the pavilion thing? I'm
well,
sorry.
I mean, I think there's room for comments. And I saw you pushing your button too, and I should defer to you because...
I was just wondering, are these items that we're seeing, are these the only items on the table, or is there room for different suggestions?
Yes, actually, council can offer or any direction or additional projects that aren't on this list per se.
Okay, I was just wondering if the renovation of the bathrooms in the pavilion had come into the conversation?
Actually, the renovation of the bathrooms are included within the retrofit program. So the retrofit of the, so it includes,
that's
it's
already
a separate
happening.
project covered in. So I'm sorry, I should have pointed that out.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I also, I guess I feel a little differently from Parks and Rec in that the refinishing the floor up there while it needs it is perhaps, in the pavilion, is perhaps not the best use of funds. I mean, I tend to agree that, you know, the ADA, you know, just to get that clear, the ADA path coming up from the bridge is probably not feasible within the footprint of what's there, and I think it could decrease the utility for regular people walking around, unless it was done really carefully. So I think it's excellent to think about the bathrooms. I think, and putting the money towards there, I think stubbing out plumbing for showers as part of that bathroom thing is a great idea, because, you know, we may be able to do something that, you know, would be more easy if we can fit that in with the same money or close to it when we're redoing those bathrooms. But I think
are you talking about the ball field bathrooms or
the
the
ball field
pavilion?
bathrooms is what part of this money is being talked about being moved to, along with the money that we have already. And if, as Larry has talked about on previous council meetings, I think it would be a help to have showers around. You know, that's something that probably in a different location would be great for keeping bicyclists in town spending money as opposed to parking for free. But it's also useful for athletics at that field and, you know, as a general community thing. I believe that the commercial kitchen up in the pavilion is really the best use of funds there, rather than refinishing the floor. It would really help on it being an emergency place, and it could actually become a center for a lot of things, in that there may be a way to work out through Parks and Rec or some other program a way that people could have that commercial kitchen available to the community, either by the hour or on a percent shared basis. I mean, it's a public space. You know, theoretically, people, I mean, there's legislation to enable people to try out recipes, things like that. I mean, we'd have to look into the legality of doing that, but that might become a good, especially with the slow food movement, and become a good focus for other community events, utilizing a commercial kitchen. So I would heartily concur with this.
Just jumping on to the thing about the pavilion, seeing it on the agenda, I dug through old files and saw that, gosh, must have been about maybe a half a dozen years ago, maybe a little less, Park and Rec was in a conversation even with the foundation, and a bunch of us went up and met with the foundation folks about some work that could be done there, kitchen and other things. And Mike Pettit, who used to be on our planning commission back in the 90s, actually is an architect and actually prepared scopes of work and dollar figures that were hung off of them. Of course, that was back in the day in pre-recession, but I provided it to the manager earlier today, so that in your thinking about it, Garrett, you'll be able to sort of have some real figures, at least back from 5 or so years ago, that might have some reality and time and place, and we can pick up that conversation. But I think the idea of the catering kitchen is, for our shelter in place, is quite important.
I'll concur with the rest of council on the catering kitchen. I think that to me is the first priority.
And by catering kitchen, we're talking about a commercial kitchen, right?
There's a difference.
No.
There's a difference.
Okay.
Yeah.
Larry? Yeah, I don't think it's quite up to par with a commercial kitchen. It's more for events than, like having somebody come in and use it to can food or something like that. So I don't quite think it's there, but what we can actually build may depend on how things cost out. So I think there's enough space to do a commercial kitchen.
There probably is, but I can tell you right now, $63,000 is not enough to
gonna
install a
cut it.
commercial kitchen.
A catering kitchen would be good too.
Okay, yeah. It's halfway, and who knows, maybe we go all the way sometime down the road.
Yeah. Could I just ask one question? So this doesn't break out the ball field project on the list of priorities. Is that somewhere in our application?
Yeah, in the application, it'll just be listed as one of the projects.
Okay.
So we'll say ball field, pavilion, and we'll list whatever the activities are.
If I'm not mistaken, is that now out for bid? I thought we put that out for bid. For the ball field.
Well, the ball fields, we did put it out to bid. It came in well above our informal bidding requirements and well above budget, so now we're back to trying to follow volunteer contractor.
Okay.
And we would pay for supplies and materials.
And where did it come in?
It came in at over 58,000.
Interesting. Okay, thank you.
A lot of money. Okay, so also in regards to this room here, having used the stage before this blue thing went up, it was a lot more useful before. And I think flexibility would really make this a lot more useful. Having put efforts into this room and knowing a number of people in the community who would, I bet you could do a lot of the efforts needed in this room with volunteer efforts and make our money go farther by the interested parties who would be interested in influencing the design, if nothing else, and besides contributing their efforts. And that might, I believe that the RZH funds would also apply to stubbing out shower types of things and enhancing athletic, recreational facilities if we had money left over from this and we needed money up there. So that could be a possibility.
We can include it. I don't know what their interpretation would be, but I think you can include whatever we like and see what happens.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So if there's no further discussion, is there any discussion from the public on this? Yes.
Mark Squire, 212 Frühstück Avenue. I wanted to maybe make a request is that, some of these public building plans, can't we get them on the website so that some of the community can weigh in on them? Because, a lot of us have an interest in them and use them and would like to see some of the detail, as a, for instance, one, I'd just like to say how critical that bathroom on the ball field is. All of our town events that are outside that occupy the ball field, it's a zoo. I've been on the EcoFest committee for a number of years, and during the Fairfax Festival, the pavilion bathrooms just get trashed. It's like the volume in there is ridiculous, and it's been compounded since the ballroom bathroom hasn't been functional. So I would just kind of plead with you to make that the ball field bathrooms high priority, and maybe even with some bells and whistles like electricity on the outside so that we can plug in some of the things that happen at community events. And then one other thing, I just wanted sort of clarification. I keep hearing about the pavilion floor being redone, and I've heard different people say that involved like putting vinyl all over it, and so I don't know, again, maybe if the detail was on the website and I could look at it, I'd know, but I just wanted to say, God, if we vinyled that floor, it would be a real crime. Thank you.
I think, could I just say on the refinishing, I think it is just refinishing, because we had a wood floor guy come and take a look at it.
Cool.
So.
The other thing is that the EcoFest committee has made money on our wine thing every year, and we had $5,000 that we wanted to earmark for that bathroom, and so it's there.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Write that down.
You just made our town manager so happy.
Mark Bell, 63 Domingo, just as far as showers in the pavilion, I hope somebody has some way to limit the amount of water used, because usually when people are taking showers when it's not their water, it's really nice. And the other thing is, if you're going to put showers in there, what it's been bandied about, like for the mountain bikers or for bicyclists, to have some place to take a shower and stay in town. Then if you're looking for a place to have, you know, a safe, secure lockup for bicycles, somebody obviously would have to, you know, be in charge over there. But, you know, pay a couple bucks to take a shower, pay some money to keep your bike there, then you can go to town and get it on the way back. Thanks.
I know when we were looking, at one point in time, David and I were looking into potential public showers to serve some of our indigent, that's not the word, population, and there are definitely sort of coin-operated or token-operated and limited. It's almost like campground type showers is the thing that we certainly looked at. I think that's the common sort of formula for public showers is it's a pay-as-you-go type of thing.
Any further comment? Okay.
Move resolution 1318.
Second.
Great. We have a motion, Weinsoff, second, Hartwell. All those in favor? Aye. So it passes unanimously. Next up, number 19 is discussion of protection of...
But there's a second resolution.
Oh,
That's 13,
sorry. Oh,
it's
you're right.
1319.
1319. Thank you.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, Weinsoff, a second, Hartwell. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. That passes unanimously. So now, we have next up on number 19, a discussion on protection of pedestrian rights-of-way, and this is my item around town, and where's the third page? There is a somewhat lengthy letter in the packet. I'd rather not read it into the record right now. Basically, it talks about the pedestrian rights-of-way around town. We've lost a couple of them over the last few years because, one was a quiet title auction. Basically a house was built really close to it, and Fairfax had never, in that relation to that particular right-of-way, Fairfax had never moved officially to adopt that right-of-way and say, yes, we want that, that's ours. It was left over from earlier when the town was first laid out. And these pedestrian rights-of-way are very valuable because people can, instead of driving 2 miles back and forth across the hill, walk 4 blocks and get into the middle of the town without starting their car. And they're walking around their neighborhoods, or they're walking their dog, or just generally recreating. It brings the community together. They, see how everything is. They meet their neighbors and get in conversations, and it really helps community. They're also very useful in the event of a disaster. One of the reasons why the Oakland fire, with its over 2,000 houses burning with 25 people killed or something like that, was an astonishingly low number. I was quoted a vastly higher number by one of our now retired fire chiefs, who was very concerned about our hills because they are very similar to Oakland's. We, at that time didn't have these pedestrian right-of-ways very well maintained at all. The efforts of the Fairfax volunteers have gone a long way to publicizing them and bringing them, into there, and I have identified some of those efforts, the mapping of them and marking of some of them. But there is more that the town of Fairfax can do, and I would be very interested in hearing, especially from our council, what actions we can take as a council here to basically ensure that the public, that these are not lost to the public inadvertently over the years, piecemeal. I know Mill Valley established their Steps, Paths, and Lanes program, which basically cemented the public's right to these in perpetuity, which I think was the intention when they were laid out. And I would hate to see, somebody 50 years from now saying, oh, too bad they didn't, because now, what we had was gone. So I had some of the remedies put out here that is part of the letter. Should I read those for the public to hear? If people know what I'm talking about, or should I read them? No? Anybody? Or, okay, all right. I mentioned that they're mapped and put online on the Fairfax Volunteers site under Fairfax Trails on one of the community projects. They're listed in the general plan. And the town council has endorsed the efforts of the Fairfax Volunteers starting in 2005 of mapping, publishing information, marking, and maintaining various trails, which they've done on a volunteer basis. Remedies also, available to the town to further mark and publicize the routes and destinations in other ways. Also pursue violators who block or otherwise take these right-of-ways from the public. Require that any blockages by building structures, fences, earthworks, landscaping, etc. by the current or previous owners be mitigated by either the removal of blockages or provision of alternative means of traversing the route as close as possible geographically to where the original right-of-way was. Recommend restoration of Fairfaxes alongside of the right-of-ways if they've been removed, to more firmly establish that the public is not walking through somebody's yard and is in fact on public property. So, that also ensures the privacy of the people around it. Establish a town-wide marking system showing the locations of the ends of the routes. This is something the volunteers have started. And their destinations, perhaps by using a plastisol street marking such as is used in the Drains to Bay campaign for stormwater runoff. And integrate the marking and promotion of the routes with public safety efforts designed to help ensure egress in emergencies. And this was something that a few years ago the police emergency services officer was talking about with the volunteers. And I think, there was a lack of funding or, momentum. There's a lot of things on the plate of the safety committee there. Provide help and materials to volunteers seeking to improve trails, which has actually been partly in the past too. And I'm curious to hear from you, Jim, whether that's enough to establish a legal acceptance or whether something is different?
No. I mean, these are all good ideas. I mean, an organized approach like this is the way to go. From a real estate law perspective, each of these sites is going to be different depending upon who has title or how the right-of-way was established, if there's a question about whether it was established. And so it could be different things in different places. There may be, for example, some offers of dedication that are outstanding that the town should accept. There may be places where the owner would donate it to get a tax deduction or something, and that could be pursued. In Mill Valley, they were fortunate to have gotten a grant of a lot of existing paths and lanes and sort of leftover areas from a trust that had been established by the initial subdivider of Mill Valley in 1900, the Homestead Valley Land Trust or something. And so about 5 years ago, they got a big donation of all these paths and lanes, and they wound up accepting not all of them because some of them were disputed by the neighboring property owners, and we know how that can be. So I think this approach makes sense, but I think to answer the question exactly about how we can assure that one particular piece of property or another stays a public right-of-way, we'd have to analyze that individually.
Do we have an inventory of the rights-of-way?
We do in the general plan. We have a listing of what are indicated by property maps with the properties going up to a space that's anywhere from 6 to 10 feet wide generally.
And do we have the documentation on the inventory? So for each of the rights-of-way, do we have some reference to maps or, recorded easements or rights-of-way?
We don't have that in like survey information. We don't. We basically have a listing of from where each pathway appears to be.
Well, it might be interesting if we have the inventory to notify people of the right-of-way. I don't know if we have the resources to actually document the legal authority for them, but
Yeah, I think we'd want to be careful. We don't want to affect somebody's right to come in and sue us for inverse condemnation or
right, or
something, or
quiet
start a title
title or
dispute.
whatever.
I did have one thought when Gary and I were talking. This would be an excellent project for a summer law student or someone to work through some of this stuff, so to suggest it's a possibility.
I think the one thing we can do, but it's a matter of staffing, is, we can go through our files and see if we have grant deeds for some of these areas that either the easements we actually own in fee title. It's difficult to say. It's probably, how many, is it 100 pieces of property or something like that?
Well, there's 104 listed in the general plan.
So you're,
And I mean, some of those are obviously, I mean, there's definitely cases where pieces have been sold and, there's been houses built on them. Sometimes, unknowingly. But, yeah, it's a project.
I just wanted to ask, whose responsibility is it to maintain? So if I ride my bike on these all the time and pavement's cracked and it's overgrown, and so how does that all play out, if I may ask? If it's public right-of-way?
I think it depends on where it is, but in general, I would say we probably don't maintain it.
And didn't we have this conversation? There's an exemption, or there's an immunity under the civil code if it's an unimproved path, or if it's a path through an unimproved property. So there's immunity from having responsibility to bring it up to like ADA or that type of compliance, so.
And I think that piece of legislation that you're talking to not only gives immunity from having to comply with ADA, but if an extension of that is if there's a trail that's maintained by volunteer efforts, it indemnifies the volunteers for it, and it's basically becomes a use at your own risk trail, much as all of these trails up in the hills around Fairfax that are so wonderful for people to come and hike on, those are pretty much use at your own risk situations, and they don't comply with ADA. And I think that when this came in front of the council back when I was on the volunteer board, that was definitely the opinion that a lot of our efforts were based upon.
So, I mean, I think it's an incredibly important thing for us to be protecting. I mean, it's really the commons, and it's really giving, it's really leaving something for people for the future. It's our heritage, really. And when I think about this project, I think about the people. You think about hiking through Ireland or places like that, where there's definitely, it's a well-established practice that you can walk on certain lanes. The public has the right to walk on certain lanes, and there's protocols of not disturbing the owners, and it's that whole feeling of community and reciprocity and respect for both ways. So I just think it's an incredible service you're providing in sort of resurrecting these trails. I mean, we've done some trail improvements where you'll actually find ancient trail markers. So when you do this trail improvement, it's like you're doing archaeology and public works at the same time. It's an incredible experience, really, at times, because you are digging through, you're going through the footsteps of what was in the past. So, I mean, I really think we should move forward on trying to document the inventory of paths that we have. Maybe with a volunteer or with a law student would be a great project for a law student or somebody who's getting a planning degree. We've got a great planning school over at UC Berkeley. So there's definitely a lot of talent in the area that we might be able to sort of hook into this project.
I agree. I think that it would, maybe that person could also look and see if there's grant funding. I don't know if there's grant funding for public safety, or if there's grant funding that we can look into for sort of reestablishing some of these that have that have gone out of repair. I know that the volunteers, I've worked on the trails too, I know the volunteers work hard, but there's out of 104 trails, how many
a lot of
volunteer days can you possibly do in a year that, and you know, you do it one year and then the next year it's you know, I mean, ideally, I mean, I think, and maybe there's some, I mean, I don't know, I guess I feel like there might be like, I want to like almost like have a goodwill campaign with some of these owners so that they don't see it as an invasion of their property, but they see it as a, like they're helping hold the, you know, a heritage of our community. They're helping create safety for their neighbors up above. Like it seems like instead of maybe going about it in this like fear of litigation, that we might try to, you know, put forward a campaign that is a really positive campaign, and that I think that the image of using the trails in that way is beautiful. Like, and that's you know, if we can maybe do a little bit of stick and a lot of carrot, maybe might be the right way to go about it. And then maybe if people, you know, understand that they have that, then maybe they'll, you know, the individual homeowners will be more willing to take care of it themselves too, as part of, you know, what they do for our town.
Yeah, I definitely concur that, you know, I mean, I would like to see it be something that pulls our community together and not become something to argue over. I mean, there's definitely got to be a way that we can do that, do it in a way that enhances the experience for everybody and, you know, doesn't step on toes, you know.
I would ask council if you're going to take the lead, or if we're going to take the lead on finding a young, unshaven, young law student to take this on. You might want to sweeten the pot with the idea of investigating it both on the deeds and the hard numbers on paper, and also whether there might be a public trust aspect to the conversation. It's been an evolving doctrine over so many years. Professor Sachs out of Berkeley, of course, in Michigan, advanced and you know, almost perfected this concept, and it would be, I think, a little it would fall within the ambit of some of the students perhaps at Bolt to take a look at this.
I'll work with the town manager on recruiting someone or setting up some job description, that sort of thing, sure.
Okay, sounds good. Is there any comment from the public on this item?
Mark Bell, 63 Domingo. So I guess one of the questions in my mind would be, how was new construction put up in the path of a pedestrian right-of-way? Was that Planning Commission? Was that the Planning Commission not having the 104 trail list? Is that at Town Hall? Like, how did that occur? How does somebody build a house on a pedestrian right-of-way?
Well, the one I'm talking about is on Power Lane. And the lower, if you're familiar with Power Lane, the lower end of Power Lane has the ruins of an old funicular on it that basically is like a little train tracks that come right down to Forest Avenue and come up. And on the top of that hill is the house in question. And I think somebody in the 60s, or let's just say that close records were not being kept at that time. You know, there's a number of things going on, but that house was built where it was built and then changed hands, and then the woman who owned that house later on went to apply for a permit and then discovered, lo and behold, that her house is not built on her property but is straddling a right-of-way that was disused because this funicular was not in use. It had become old and decrepit, and people who live on Power Lane or were walking down Power Lane to get into town were cutting down a driveway, which is where the pathway to Power Lane is right now. And so when that was discovered, I think it was early 90s, mid 90s, something like that, an arrangement was made for that homeowner to buy the piece of land that was underneath that house. And then that, I believe it was $27,000 or $29,000 or something like that. That became a little piece of money that has been actually used for, you know, it was earmarked and said it didn't go into the general fund. It was earmarked to do good things like that around, and it served different functions. I mean, one of the things was the Melvin property was up for sale, and a deal got put together using that money as part of it for the open space acquisition. And then that's been paid back, and then it's been used in a couple of other different things. I think the Fairbuck is one of the more recent things
So
where that
any of the
loan money came
104
from there,
on
and it's going to go back.
unincorporated?
I'm sorry?
Are any of the 104 pedestrian right-of-ways on unincorporated
No,
parts of Fairfax?
no, those are all within the town limits.
Okay. And then the other thing that I remember from years ago, I don't know how current it is in today's climate, but supposedly somebody was trying to build a building in San Francisco, and it was proven that people have been walking through this part of the property for like 10 or 20 or 30 or 50 years to go from like one, to go to lunch, during the day, and that established the right of way, and that they couldn't encroach on that. So actually, they had to move the plans for the building to leave that passage for people. I don't know if that's still current.
Yeah, well, that's a very different type of thing. That's something called a prescriptive easement, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'll, since I'm kind of familiar with it, I'll do my lay law thing. A prescriptive easement, prior to 1972, it had to be in use regularly by, a certain percentage of the population, or a large, certain number of people. And you have to prove that, as they did evidently in San Francisco. I'm not familiar with that particular thing. But, for a continuous 5-year period prior to 1972, and that's the legal hurdle that you need to prove that that exists. And that's kind of a tough bar to pass here in a small town like Fairfax, because, if you can find 25 people who can, in a deposition say that they used that regularly for over a 5-year period prior to 1972, they have to have lived here and be old enough. And
after 1972, it doesn't count?
That's when the laws in California were changed to change that. But that's called a prescriptive easement, and that's quite different from what we have here, where the property lines are built, come up to either side.
Hey, Mark, just to tell you about the challenges of planning in Fairfax, the entire road that I live on, it's in the wrong place.
Mark Squire, 212 Free Stick. I actually live next to one of those, and there are many of them, and I guess I would just throw out, I think maybe how we could deal with it is if we could prioritize, which ones are the most valuable for really being a foot transportation system in town, and then maybe, earmark 1 or 2 and see if we can improve it, because a lot of them, like the one next to our house, is just you can't even walk on it. It's a mess. But I think that they're in all, all variations of disrepair, and I would just, say, hey, let's pick one and do it.
And there is a really good map of all of them, and they're color-coded for this one's passable, this one's sort of might be kind of passable at your own risk, and then this one's totally blocked. So but there hasn't been, I think, a prioritizing of critical ones, which I think is a great idea.
In the past with volunteer projects, the grading of the passability of the different ones is available, and that map that Pam is referring to is on the fairfaxvolunteers.org website, under Fairfax Trails tab. But in terms of prioritizing which ones get the volunteer efforts, it has a lot to do with who's interested and willing to put volunteer hours in, and it's often usefulness to that person. The one adjacent to your house, Mark, I know is blocked at the top, and so when nobody's using it, it falls into disrepair and overgrowth comes. But if it's unblocked, then people tend to use it, especially if they know about it. So,
Could I just add one sort of footnote on the property that you were talking about? We did a lot line adjustment on that. And that was done in about 2004. It was Denise Dunn, and that fund was the basis of the Open Space Committee's founding, essentially. And the reason I'm bringing it up is because I've been asked to put forward a resolution dedicating the fund to remain as an open space fund. So I didn't want to let the comment go by. The Fairbuck we actually funded with money that we got on the interest on the loan we made to Marin Energy Authority. So we have like a special little entrepreneurial or innovation fund that funded the Fairbuck. So that's my footnote.
Yeah, and the loan for that's coming back soon. So, so if there's not further discussion on this, basically, I don't know if we're, I don't think we're directing.
I think we have enough direction. It's in our work plan.
Okay, great. Well, thank you.
Good one.
Next up is number 20, and since it's after 10 o'clock, I should pay attention to what we said at the beginning, is that we'll probably finish this entire agenda well before 11:30. We have 2 more to go. Number 20, it depends on you, Pam, because the next one is yours, discussion consideration of a street mandala project.
I'm going to go
talk about
as fast as humanly possible. I have a couple of orders of desire here. Obviously, I won't be at another meeting, but to approve this. So one piece is requesting that another council member maybe be willing to take this up, but that can be decided after this. And the other is sort of just seeing if people think this is a good idea. Street mandala project. We've got a couple of the color photos here. Is a project that I first learned about, oh my gosh, almost like 8 or 9 years ago from an organization up in Portland called City Repair. And they did it to do traffic calming in their intersections and also as community building and just opportunities to mark their unique character. And it's something that, as the Executive Director of Sustainable Fairfax, we certainly talked about and didn't have some of the ability to push it forward. And it's something that I've just always wanted to make happen in this community. We did a sort of a test of it at our Streets for People event this past summer, and we did a temporary one that washed off in the rain. Jen Jones is our local artist who made that happen. Thank you, Jen. And she is willing to really lead on this one and make this one happen as well. And I think, our plan, our thought, and our idea, and this is all open for feedback, is to do this in our main intersection, to do this at the sort of entry to town, at the bottom of the steps of the parkade. I immediately went, the first person I went to was the chief, and he was just like, nope, I'm not blocking off the street for you again, Pam. Even though Streets for People went so well. And so we recommended doing it at night, on a weeknight, literally in the middle of the night, get some lights out there so that we're not impeding the traffic as much. There are a few other comments. I brought it to Garrett as well so that he could take it to staff to see what staff concerns were. We're totally willing to raise whatever money it takes. We're also willing, and we believe we'll get plenty of volunteers to help with directing traffic and putting up the no parking signs. There's not actually parking there. We're going to check on the bus schedule to make sure that we're not going to have a bus rolling over it. And we want to, we're basically what we're looking for from council and public right now is, do you think it's a good idea to proceed with an official, proposal on this to come back to the council, ideally May, at the May meeting, and during this next month, really get buy-in from some of the local businesses, buy-in from the chamber, other organizations. But what we're kind of looking for from the council and the public at this point is to say, this sounds like a good idea. Why don't you go ahead and see what you can pull together?
So cars would drive over it?
Cars would indeed drive over it.
Once it was dry.
Once it's dry, and the paint, there's amazing, I've included some of the links in the public packet. If you follow them, you will find there are hundreds and hundreds of these across the country at this point in time. There are nonprofit organizations in 7 different cities dedicated only to this sort of placemaking, as they call it, or this sort of intersection reclaiming. I've been looking for traffic studies. I had heard there was a traffic study done in Portland on it. I couldn't find the actual traffic study. I'll keep looking. The anecdotal evidence was always that it calmed traffic and that there were less problems at intersections. And we know that the Bolinas Broadway intersection is a challenging intersection. And so it's our hope to, you know, and none of these, the design, our thought was also that the design will come with the official proposal, that these are examples of other ones that have been done and what mandalas really look like for people who don't know what a mandala is. But that we would, you know, once we get kind of the go-ahead, a more official design specific to our intersection will be forthcoming. So.
Any comments?
I think it's a wonderful idea, and I know how beautiful they are and what a good job this community would do and the artists of this community. I have to be sort of the voice of intersection safety only because I ride through that intersection and watch what happens there and feel it every single day. So, and I think in terms of preparing this, we would need to really be able to specifically state the different studies and what happens at intersections with multiple crosswalks and multiple directions, turning lanes and all of that stuff. But I think it's all workable, but I would want to cover all those bases and make sure that people who asked questions about that could get some real statistical nerve calming. And I think it's an amazing idea. I would like to help make that happen.
Other comments? You have comments, David? Larry?
I think it's a good idea. I think it probably should go through design review before the design is chosen, just to get their way in. And, you know, I would definitely think we'd want to try to get as many of the stakeholders to support it, because you know, that's a very busy intersection. You know, now I've put on, you know, my lawyer blinders, and I'm going, will there be sufficient friction coefficient on the pavement so that, you know, as bike riders go over it in the rain, whether it's going to be too slippery for folks. So I think it could be a beautiful idea, and it could really be it could be a real placemaker. But I would just want to go through a couple of those filters as quickly as we could to see if we could create the momentum of support that I think would really make it work, instead of it being just, you know, a comment that people blog against on various local publications. I think another good location for it would actually be at the end of Bolinas, where it doglegs, you know, up towards Deer Park, right at that intersection too, would be a beautiful place to have something like that.
Yeah, there are 37, I believe, in the city of Portland at different intersections all over the community. And I know that, and I actually tried to send this to the Planning Commission first and was told on numerous occasions there's no planning process for this. So I finally decided to bring it here first.
My only thought would be design review, just to get their buy-in on the color scheme and all that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I also agree that it would be a good thing, and I've seen, you know, a lot of positive response from the city repair projects up in Portland. But likewise, I don't want to, you know, I want people to embrace it and come around it. And, you know, if you try to go too fast, that's one of the things that might happen, is somebody, you know, decides it's a bad idea, and then they, you know, they're just deciding it's a bad idea and making a lot of things like that. But if they get brought along and talked to earlier, some of their concerns can be incorporated into the project, and then all of a sudden they're not naysayers, they're pro, or at least neutral. You know, it's important to get buy-in, because this is a community space. It's for everybody, and it's not just for, you know, making a bold statement which doesn't necessarily include everybody. I mean, it's important to bring everybody into it, and I think you're right to go to the, you know, various stakeholders and you know, and think about traffic safety. But I think they're wonderful. I really like the one that was on Bolinas Road and from the Trees for People event, so I'm supportive in that way.
Sure.
Do you want to be the, yeah? All right, so is that it? Okay. So our final item is something that has a deadline that's not tonight, but there's discussion and consideration of a response to the grand jury report entitled Marin on Fire Redux. Is that the right pronunciation of that? I mean, is there, do you want to give a small staff report on that, or?
Really quickly, yeah, per your council policy, all the responses to the grand jury go to the council under public discussion. My understanding is staff fills out the response form, and then we attach it to the report and let the council then kind of review and comment on what they want to do. Briefly, the grand jury is just recommending that the Marin Municipal Water District Board approve what they call Approach 2, which is the use of a specific herbicide to control the infestation of broom in Marin County. And really, it's you have 60 days from March 25th to respond to a report. I know the chief's here if you'd like his comments, but really, we just need the comments from the council in order to know what to send back to the grand jury.
Who filled out the second page?
I did.
Okay. There's a disconnect. We don't have to agree with findings 1 through 9. If you look on pages 14 of 24 and 15 of 24, and particularly at the bottom of 15 of 24, it says request for responses, and it tells us under the penal code which ones we are responsible for. And those are 1, 2, 3, F1, 2, 3, F9, R3, and R5. Just to make a comment, I think most of those are absolutely benign, F1, 2, and 3, and R3 and R5. F9, on the other hand, I've read dozens of grand jury reports, and rarely do I come across such snarky language as in the first sentence. So I think that F9 sort of steps away from the rather benign genericness of the other bunch. So in filling out whatever we decide, please make the note that we are not even asked to do, there's a limited scope of which ones we are being asked to approve.
Can I add that, that when you put findings 1 through 9, that includes finding 5, which is agreeing that the use of herbicides in conjunction with traditional vegetation management is the most effective means to eliminate broom. Which we're not
asked to comment upon.
But in our response to the grand jury, it does say we agree with the findings numbered 1 through 9.
Actually, that's just what staff filled out. Whatever the council decides will be what's on the form.
Yeah.
Okay, so this was just,
This is just what we filled out really quickly, knowing that.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that wasn't what we were saying.
This is a checkoff box that.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe it shouldn't have been checked off, is the point. But, yeah, I also agree with you, David, that, that's not the only place where there's snarky language included in there. If you look at F8, it's the same sort of thing, their agreement to stop herbicides to control broom has resulted in over 300 acres of increased broom infestation over the past 8 years with a high risk of fire. And while the broom area may have been increasing during that time, I might also add that, the water district was attempting to use volunteers to pull broom, and a couple of other things. Somebody has suggested goats, and they in fact used goats, but they used them during the wrong season, and then they did not give instruction to the goat herd to, eat this and not that, and so the goats went and ate a lot of madrone trees. And so they said, well, ghosts don't work.
Wait a minute, but what I'm,
You know,
I'm- but
and,
what,
and I mean, I think some of that is indicative of like, well, we want to go the easy way and just spray toxics in a watershed.
sure. But what I'm trying to do here is, we have our legal responsibility to respond to the grand jury, so I just want to make sure that we are, well, we can talk about anything we want, but they gave us a limited scope of questions, not the whole kit and caboodle, just F1, 2, and 3, which I must say, I don't think anybody could possibly disagree with 1, 2, and 3. I mean, they're just benign.
Well, yeah, those are chosen that
And
way,
all-
and other ones are not chosen.
Right, but we're not asked to comment on the other ones. Just 1, 2, 3, and 9 in the F series, and R3 and R5 in the recommendation series. And I don't know if there's conversation on that. The only one that really just jumped out at me is just.
Was F9.
Was F9, which I couldn't agree with.
Yeah.
But the other ones seem to be benign.
Yeah, I wouldn't call them benign, but, you know, I don't know that they're necessarily completely accurate. I mean, there's certainly, I mean, fire is a problem, broom is a problem, you know, we can all definitely agree on that. You know, and I don't know, I mean, they request responses as follows. It doesn't say to the following things.
Yes, it does.
Does that mean we're limited only to those?
We're
Or
only
can we comment on anything?
mandated to respond to the ones where there's a request for response. And so we can respond any way we wish, I suppose, but they have said you must respond to those 7 things.
But my point is, we could respond to others as well, correct?
Yes. And you can also attach an explanation or qualification. You have to check the yes, no, or agree, disagree box, but if you want to attach an explanation, you can. The only thing is that, under the law, the verbatim response that's submitted by the town has to go before an open session of the council, so that it would have to come back if you want to have an expanded explanation.
Well, if there are responses to this report, would it be fitting for us to continue this item, bring it back next month, and then have various council members?
I'd like to have the opportunity
that.
to respond. I mean, this grand jury report, in my estimation, really is a cut and paste of the MMWD's vegetation management plan, and really does not take a critical look at the needs, the overall needs of the community. And so I would certainly like to take a closer look at it and take a closer look at our response. I believe that this council passed a resolution in opposition to the use of any pesticides or herbicides in the watershed. So I don't think we should be co-opted into endorsing the MMWD vegetation management plan, number one, before it goes through the public process, which it hasn't. There hasn't been full public comment on that EIR yet. So that, excuse me, remains to be completed. So for us to weigh in to endorse essentially the recommendations of the tentative or the preliminary vegetation management plan, I think is premature. And I really think the grand jury is a little bit overstepping its bounds here, because they're asking us to weigh in on an EIR that hasn't even been completed yet. So I think, you know, I'm very interested in this particular matter, and have attended several vegetation management plan meetings, and do think we need to kind of pay a little closer attention to it rather than just sort of direct staff to do a quick and easy response.
Yeah, I agree with you. I couldn't understand why the grand jury jumped the shark into this in advance. It seems as if this would be something that would come out a year from now. But they did what they did. So we do have the legal obligation to respond however we choose to do so. And perhaps, as council is saying, expand our conversation beyond the 7 or so that they've asked us to opine about. But we do have a legal obligation to respond to this however we
And I'm fine with that. It's just I don't want to see us kind of do a quick and easy when it's an open process. And we're really being asked to make conclusions and findings of fact when we don't have all the facts on the table.
So how do we put it together? Usually staff writes it up and then we noodle, but you have a thought.
Well, staff's preference would be that the council maybe appoint 2 members to draft up a response, whatever you'd like for this, and then we could put it on the agenda for May, and then you actually would have the response and the verbatim response that you can then at the meeting adjust and then be done with it, because you only have that 60-day window, and I don't think you want a special meeting, so it would just give you that ability.
I would be willing to do that. I mean, I'd like to do that, or at least be one of the members that does it. So anybody else wants to join me, that's fine.
I would join you. I'd be interested in working with you on this.
Okay.
Well, I guess we have a subcommittee of the council. Though I don't know if that's called a subcommittee. Is there public comment on this? Yeah. Ad hoc committee.
Mark Bell, 63 Dominga. Yeah, and I would start off with MMWD trying to poison us with some derivative of Agent Orange or whatever the heck it is. And that would be number 1. I would renumber the list where if they want us to respond to whatever, 1, 2, 3, FGA 365, which are fine, and put them down last at the bottom and spend the first part of it talking about why are you telling us that we have to agree to have ourselves poisoned? This is pretty serious stuff. You can look back, I think there's a book called Outrageous Misconduct, which has documented evidence that in the early 1900s, like 1910, 1915, all the asbestos companies knew that it was killing people and fought tooth and nail for how many decades to keep that from coming out. Asbestos probably is still even used today. People used to come back from the plants covered in fibers and hug their little kids who would come up and welcome them home from work. They'd be totally covered in asbestos fibers. Look about Agent Orange, Love Canal. So, I mean, how anyone can think that Roundup is some, gift of the gods, it's not. It's poison. And why should we poison ourselves so that 50 years from now or 20 years from now, the general public finally goes, oh, wow, it's actually poison. Maybe I should have listened to those people 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago who already knew it. Thank you.
I guess this is the Mark and Mark show tonight. Mark Squire, 212 Frustick. I'm on a nonprofit board called the Non-GMO Project, and in that capacity, I've looked at a lot of the studies about glyphosate and Roundup in particular, and anybody that says it's a safe chemical has got to have their head examined, or they just haven't read the studies yet. There's a lot of new information coming through that is documenting that there are very real health problems associated with it. So I would plead with you guys to protect our community and don't allow them to spray this stuff in our drinking water. Thank you.
Can you start, we have to educate ourselves. We do attend the MMWD meetings and things like that, but of course we then get to digest what they ask us to, what they feed us. I would like you to send randomly, whenever you want, just send stuff to us on this, okay? That way we're going to have a much more balanced understanding.
Thanks.
Are there more comments from the public? Seeing none, I guess I'll close public comment period and bring it back to the council. Is there any more further thoughts before we put this one to bed?
That's good.
Good? Okay. So we have a ad hoc committee of Larry Bragman and David Weinsoff to work on some responses to this that coming back next month. Absolutely. Right. Great, thank you very much. And that wraps it up. So, and it's only 10:30. So I would like to commend Pam Hartwell here and say thank you for her service to the town in many ways, and last but not least, her sweating it out up here for 3.5 years, thereabouts. And it's been a pleasure working with you in many capacities, and not least of all on this council. So thank you.
You're welcome. I move that we adjourn.
Second.